Hello. There we go. There it is. Hey everybody. Hi. I'm Trooper SJP and this is the Academic Foxhole, and you should now be able to hear me and also see me. I believe. This is my belief system. Oh, I don't think I like what this means.
Name game.
Ooh. The name game. Come on everybody. I said now let's play a game. I betcha I can make a rhyme out of anybody's name. The first letter of the name. I treat it like I wasn't there. And then a B or an F. Or an M will appear. And then I say bo out of B. Then I say the name. A banana, fan, and foe. Then I say the name again with an F, very plain. Then a fee, fi, and a mo. Then I say the name again with an M this time, and there isn't any name that I can't rhyme. But if the first two letters are ever the same, I drop them both and say the name. I like Bob. Bob drop the B's, Bo, Ob, or Fred. Fred drop the F's, fo, red, or Mary. Mary drop the M's, mo, airy. That's the only rule that is contrary. Falcon of Venom, Falcon of Venom, Falcon of Venom, Bo, Falcon of Venom, Banana, Fanta, Fo, Falcon of Venom, Fee, Fi, Mo, Malcon of Venom. Falcon of Venom. Also, that's too hot. I need to turn down my volume. I was peaking. Hello. Okay, I feel like I'm not peaking. Anyway, hi everyone. How are you? I'm a little red-faced today. Also, I feel like we have our new microphone up, but we've got it in its new placement. But I think this is not where it's going to ultimately be. I can see and hear you, says Carl, and therefore you are real. Maybe. I don't know if I'm real. I might not be. I might. I have things. I put in an AT 2020. I still have the I think the background's too loud. Stop that. I'm gonna just. Oh. An ad. Yeah. PH. I got an ad out is what happened. Let me turn this down a little bit here. Let me go. Like sometimes when I do the PS4 play, I lose connection, but it's here. So everybody, yeah, I'm still working things out. Test. Better. Yeah, it was off because it died. That's why. Yeah, be careful with cord management if you're using it. It's weird, you know. Oh, you know what I don't have? My controller. Yeah, sometimes when you have the AT-AT, the cord management just causes everything to crash. Do you know what I mean? Also, hey, Wizard Styles, and also Scabby Neck. I see you over there. I think I can do this. Oh, or this. So. Perfect. So everybody, I wanted to chat with you briefly before we start. Right now, I'm not excited about where the microphone is. Like, it's right here, which is fine. It's kind of blocking some visibility. And everybody says that I should be closer to the mic to get like a better sound. I fell asleep halfway through the New Year's Eve stream. Happy New Year's, Wizard Styles. Or Kame Shurkin, hello. I was thinking about you. So I need to replace the mic so it's actually closer to my face. And it's also currently visible on my other camera, which is not what I want. But we'll work it out. Airway and hey, the anime. Airway and hey, the anime. Ivoy at Gilly at way exute Gilly young way. Airway and hey, the anime. Hey, the ice skates are on, he say. Old man, the ocean pray, we are a wood, you are still way hungry. He bring headlines of where bronze lay today. And when we see the end, the Lord will look at the eye, and the eye, we're in the money, we're in the money. We've got a lot of what it takes to get along. That was We're in the Money, as sung by Ginger Rogers from the film Gold Diggers 1933, which means it was sung in Pig Latin, and that was in thanks to PH's chord management joke, deserves rewards, which I think is fair, and then also the wonderful bits from Rissa. Hey, hi. So I agree that you have to put the microphone closer to your face. Well, the thing right now is that I'm seeing the volume actually being quite loud on my mic, that so much that I'm clipping just a little bit, not too much, but just a little bit. So I think volume-wise, it should be good. But even though I think it should be good volume-wise, I think that if I should be about 6 inches to the mic. And if I'm 6 inches to the mic, I think I'll get a different tone. So I don't think I'm gonna have to turn the volume down, right? So rather than it being about volume, it would be about tone. So I really, Origami says, I'm excited to get back to playing game streaming because I got a new mic for Christmas now. And he said, right, I got a new mic too. We're like new mic buddies. I should probably be, I've got this pop filter on it right now, which you can see, pop filter. But actually, I'm gonna take this pop filter off and put like a foam cover on it. Oh, mindful oblivion. Thank you for the compliments on A State of Affairs. I loved A State of Affairs, and I loved my character, and I don't know, maybe one day we'll be able to play them again. So I should be around here on the mic, probably. I should probably be this close. I'd have to turn things down, but like in terms of tone, I should probably be around here. So this should come out a bit more, but I'm gonna work that out. I'm gonna think about that a little bit later. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna think about that a little bit later than right now, and I think that's fine. Yeah, a closer fitting pop filter would definitely. Yeah. No, I'm gonna put a microphone condom on it rather than like a outside. I know what I mean. I know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Exactly, right? So if I was like that, Crone's like, yeah, you sound a lot better. There's more roundness of tone. Yes. Yes. And so you'll just get I have to talk quieter because the closer I get, the more I would have to turn down. But if you get closer, gosh, I have to see what's going on with my Wi-Fi. That's distressing. So like I'll basically have a better tone if I get up closer, probably right around here. But to do that, I just need to move the mic is what I need to do. The only thing I regret about State of Affairs is that Cutherny never showed up. That's fair. I keep thinking about it, and I think that how about for your 1,500 follower special, making it a Discord karaoke party? Well, it would have to probably be. Come on, PS4, PS Play. It would have to be probably be karaoke Discord only, because you know. Sorry, I'm just looking at whether or not I can move the mic from what this setup is like right now, and I don't think I can. Look, I don't think I told you all. I want to do a movie night, probably only through Discord, and I have to figure out how to do it. Yeah, for DMCA reasons, yes. I wouldn't want to do a Patreon only karaoke via Zoom. That just seems too exclusionary. I don't think I could do that. That would make me sad. Again, you know, I have got to think about it. I've got to think about how to do a thing that, yeah, I have to think about it. Anyway, look, here's what I want to tell you. I'm going to work out volume should be here, but tone should be different. I'm going to work out a better mic placement, but I don't think I want the mic to be standing up like this. I think I want it to be maybe sideways and then lower. And I'm going to work it out so that it doesn't ruin all of my sight lines, is all I'm going to say. You find it odd that only portions of the Twitch Things recording were muted? Huh. I imagine that they're going to have the entire VOD taken down pretty soon, though, is what I think. I mean, that's my imagination. Speaking of which, we're going to just do this so that now the game will probably crash all the time, because right now weirdness is happening with the connection. So we're going to just do our best. Let me make things a little bit easier. Yep, I lost my connection. I knew it. I tried. You know what I mean? Like, I tried. But we're gonna just do a little. Once it gets started, I think we'll be good. We just have to get it going. That's all. Let's see. What game signed by 1 p.m.? Oh, well, I mean, look, we don't know how it's going to go. We're just doing it because things are a little bit weird at the moment. And we want to, you know, in case. I mean, the Twitch Thing stuff should be all fine under DMCA, but that's why those songs they have. Oh, well, don't worry. I'm going to answer your philosophical query. I just have to find it. Let's see. Krellin. If you're talking philosophical things, why is a metal cover of a joke fan song played totally straight so awesome? Why is a metal cover of a joke fan song played totally straight so awesome? Well, I imagine awesome is subjective, right? Is what I would imagine. I would say most likely the reason is because we tend to take things that are more dramatic. We tend to think drama is higher quality than comedy, right? That tends to be how our society works, so that things that are dramatic are better than things that are comedic. And so there's very little that's as serious as metal. Earnest singer-songwriters also count. And so if you want to up the quality of things and make it seem more serious, then there are a couple of things that you can do. Copy link location. There are a couple of things you can do to sort of like up your artistry cred, depending on who it is that you are, which audience you're going for. So metal speaks to a particular audience. It also has implications of expertise, genius, virtuosity, especially now. I mean, in the 80s it was a little bit different, but now especially that metal is no longer like a popular genre as much, so it doesn't get like the negatives for popularness, but it gets all like the positiveness for both rebellion but also sort of virtuosic smartness, and also seriousness. So if you take a joke song, and jokes being things we don't take seriously, we don't have a lot of value for, and then you turn it into a metal cover, automatically it's going to get more cred culturally. So that's one of them. How have you noticed how much literature ends on a down note, or at least yeah. It includes the line, I'm a dwarf, I'm digging a hole, diggy diggy hole, diggy diggy hole. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that you could do, of course, hey Ice Bunny, the other thing you could do is like turn it into an acoustic cover with very, very earnestness. And then that will also get you some cred, but it won't be as macho, right? So if you do the earnest singer-songwriter thing, you won't get the crowd that sort of like values a certain level of masculinity, because at this point in time we sort of gendered folk feminine, and of course metal is gendered masculine. So if you want your seriousness, but you want to sort of keep sort of like masculine coding, then metal is a way to go. Metal or prog rock, but prog rock is not popular even as an outsider music at the moment. So you'll get more cultural capital by turning your cover into metal at the moment. than you will prog rock. Metal done folk acoustic is pretty. Oh, see, and if you're then you can just mix both of the things that get you all of the cultural cred, metal and sort of earnest folkness, and then you sort of, but you have to make sure you have to make sure that you're still super manly if you're going to do your you have to be very careful that your acoustic folk cover doesn't turn unmanly. So you've got to make sure you do things. If you look at some of the kind of like folk metal bands, they make sure they have all the masculinity of metal so that nobody is confused about their hardcoreness, even while they do their acousticness. I mean, it's interesting. I think it's interesting. Like the MTV Unplugged series, like what rock bands would do to make sure they kept their rock cred, even though they were doing acoustic covers. This is the first time I've heard metal given props to, Vulpes. If you are in the scene, it's like all of there's a reason why people who want to show you that metal is good and valuable and worthy will point to the fact that like Yngwie Malmsteen knows how to play classical guitar, and they'll point out all the classical music references in metal as proof of genius. They'll talk about like the influences on Baroque, and they'll talk about like Eddie Van Halen, and it's very often to sort of get that cultural cred for being genius and virtuosic, they're going to go with the guitar players and they're going to bring up classical music. That tends to be how they get their cultural capital that way. Trooper, why is it so awesome when you take my silly joke questions so seriously? I don't know if it's awesome, but I do this, like, I just always assume that people are serious when they say the things unless they tell me otherwise, which means I often take joke questions very seriously indeed, but I do, like, I always do. And then someone's like, well, 8 hours later, I was actually just kidding about the marshmallows. And I was like, oh. Origami Shuriken says, but I love comedy, unless it's like exclusively gross fart jokes played over and over, I guess. That can get old after a while. Or maybe it was, well, you know what's worse? You know what's the worst? Clearly Origami Shuriken, what's the worst is like old farts. No. Sorry. Baby metal is neither. Again, metal is a very tricky genre because if you go too far out of, I mean, what those norms are have changed, right? What people thought of as metal in 1976, people today might not think of as metal. They might call it hard rock or whatever, because our idea of what is in or what is out of metal has changed so much over time. I mean, early metal was basically a bunch of blues bands, you know what I mean? Like, they're a bunch of British blues bands. So what we think of as metal has changed quite a lot, and this has always been under debate. There's always been sort of fan wars about what does and what doesn't count as metal, and people get very upset about it. And yeah, metal is one of those genres that people get very, like, fans will get into huge debates about, sort of like micro genres about and what counts and what doesn't count. And there's like a whole bunch of, like, did all those hair metal bands count? Well, it depends. If you don't want your metal to have female fans, then no, hair metal bands didn't count because it wasn't manly enough, right? There was weirdness, actually. There's a lot of weirdness in the 80s about, like, it's like the gender and sexuality politics and metal was very, very weird in the 80s, which I always thought was a little bit hilarious because there were a bunch of dudes who were super misogynistic and didn't want women at their metal shows and didn't like metal that appealed to women, and they thought that, like, you need to be like the most manly ever. Manly. But of course, like, they're like, you want to know what we really like? We like Judas Priest because they're the most manly. And I was like, Rob Halford is dressing like a gay leather daddy bear. You just don't know it because you have never been to gay leather bars, but, like, it's fine. Anyway, I always thought that was funny. It was like, for me, it was like a little bit hilarious that there are a bunch of dudes who did not realize what it was they were grooving on, and that always made me laugh, always. Another one of your jokes failed about baby metal. Again, remember, I just take everything very seriously. Oh, wait. Origami, I've got a thought for you. We need a sarcasm font. I thought bar rock is only the older, less cool brother of rock. Bar rock. Do you mean rock being sung by bands in bars as bar rock? Is that how you're defining bar rock? Or are you thinking of a different sort of subgenre? Because I feel like that gets all the cred. I can sing metal a little, but since my self-teaching has been more show tunes and hymns, my voice isn't super suited for metal. Oh, Krellin, can I just say something about your comment? I like your comment because I think that people do not realize that sounding in a way is practiced. I know people will say, oh, I just quit out again. Excuse me. Hello. I just lost that PS4 connection. We'll get it back. People will say, oh, you know, you naturally sound like X, so good for XYZ genre, but that's not how genres work. Do you know what I mean? Like you sound good for a genre because you've practiced sounding good for a genre. And I think people really underestimate the ways in which sounding good in metal is a thing that you learn and that you practice and you cultivate and you develop, or sounding good for folk or for country or whatever. This is, it's practice. Like Krell is noting, right? You practice it. Mongolian metal with a touch of folk. Oh, I listened to that band. They're very good. Like in Team America World Police with Infinite Vomit Scene. Oh, yeah. I mean, although some people really, really like gross out humor. For what it's worth, both Andrew WK and Alice Cooper are big fans of baby metal. Oh, that's cool. You know, sometimes I find oftentimes, this is not just about metal, it's about a lot of things. The people creating the thing are way less uptight and boundary seeking than the people who listen to it. Which I always find very interesting. Because I'm trying to get closer, watching my peaks to get the different tone. Because fans are super invested in things in terms of like their identity and what it means for who they are as a human being. And so they can get very, very uptight about things in ways that the people creating the art are not as, like, the people creating the art are often much more open about things, which then sometimes can cause trouble because the bands themselves are often a lot more open for experimentation and change. And then they do that, and then fans freak out because they're like, I can't believe, right, that, for example, when Dylan plugged in his guitar at the Newport Folk Festival and people lost their minds, like, how dare you use the electric guitar, because that is ruining everything, right? So like people sometimes get very, fans can be way more narrow-minded oftentimes than the artists, but you also can't just ignore that, because if you tick off your fans enough, they'll stop being your fans and then you won't have a career, right? Yeah, The Who is super interesting. Very, very interesting. Oh, and I really love that band that I really love that song Avalanche that Krellin posted in Discord Media. It was very good. Who gets to choose what counts and when the definition gets to change? PH, I would say, generally speaking, who gets to choose what counts are the people who have power in that particular sphere. So it's like a combination of, yeah, it's who has power, but power is defined a little bit loosely. We are back to the problems with scene and gatekeeping in music and what is good. Oh, yeah. The Who's amazing. A friend posted a link to the Wolf Totem song. Yeah. If the bars in bar rock are iron bars, is it actually metal? Maybe. No, the stuff from the 18th century. Oh, you mean bard rock with the D, which is more medieval, right? Yes. I think you mean bard rock, like all those sort of like, but the medieval covers of pop tunes that are going around on YouTube. Although since it's going to YouTube, I think it's actually cool at the moment. Baby metal is more popular outside Japan. Hey, Schmelzer, that is often the case that people like things. Would Bar Rock Obama be an Irish pub featuring metal? Asking for a friend. There is an Irish band that did a thing about Obama being Irish. I don't know. I think they're kind of like one of those like Celtic rock bands. There's a song. I remember hearing it sometime at some point in time. Uh, Baroque. Huh. Who gets what counts are mostly old German men, at least in music. Baroque and roll. So no bard rock is music played in the armor for horses. No bard rock. Barding. So except well, I mean, old German men for music, quote unquote, overall, but in the realm of popular music, it's usually not old German men. It's usually Jan Wenner and a certain group of boomers who like own Rolling Stone magazine and VH1 and MTV. There's a crew of people who control that discord as well. Baroque and roll. Oh yeah, I just, again, a lot of metal bands practiced on Baroque music, right? There's a lot of Baroque music in heavy metal. I don't know if there's a lot of Baroque music in heavy metal now, but there certainly was a lot of Baroque music and heavy metal in the 80s. And there's a huge sort of Baroque turn to sort of, yeah, it was a huge turn. So there's and it's, again, so this question of who gets to decide what's going on here, by the way. Trooper, boomers are old, those are men, and now the only one says, are they German of descent? Well, that's a good question. They might be. Boomers control MTV. That explains why they stopped showing music videos. That's actually, it's not that they're boomers why they stopped showing music videos. It's because they did not own music videos. Right? It's about monetization. It's one of the reasons why Netflix started creating original content. I mean, MTV for the first couple of years only showed music videos, which they did not own, which means they had nothing that they could resell themselves. So I think one of the first things they did was Remote Control, which was a game show that had Colin Quinn in it as a host, I think. So they basically just started creating original content so that they owned it and then could you make more profit that way, right? So basically it's about making money. It's again, right? It's why Netflix started making and HBO, right? So it's why HBO started making original content. Netflix started making original content because then this is the medallion retrieved from Opal's remains. It is inscribed with the letters Charon. Well, we'll take that. Baroque is all about the trills. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. But it's also not tonal, right? And a lot of metal was using modal music. So there's a reason why most metal didn't go to classical music or romantic music, but it went to Baroque. Or if you're going to more modern stuff like medieval, there's a lot of the more modern stuff that sounds folk is just really going medieval, because those are pre-tonal genres for the most part. So if you're used to, I'm hearing gross things in the background, by the way, everyone. I want you to know that I'm hearing the sounds of bugs, which I find somewhat disconcerting. That's all I'm saying. Oh, yeah, look, they're monsters just right over there. Here I am looting things and talking about metal and it's all lovely, but there are monsters over there just sitting. It's cool. We're just looting. The money men is why they don't show music videos. Reality TV. Oh yeah, it makes them way more money. And you own it. You know what I mean? Why would you? Thanks. Yeah, no, it's a whole thing. It's a whole thing. And also, it also makes sense in some ways with Netflix, because Netflix was in a precarious position because they were making their money, right? Renting DVDs and streaming them. And a bunch of networks were like, why should we let Netflix make money off of our stuff when we can just not allow them to use our stuff and have our own streaming system? So, that was a thing. Music videos are more fun. Them 16, you can get pregnant when you have sex. Although people would have sex to music videos. I mean, right? Struggling musicians are often Baroque. I see you. I see you. It may just be background sounds. Yeah, no, there are bugs right over there. Oh, You should be here for the medievalism. You should. And Blockbuster died. Yeah. So there's like a whole thing about sustainability and, you know, monsters. Yeah. But so the thing about, and look, I'm going to tell you, like, full disclosure, I personally am not particularly excited about relying on classical music to get your cred, because I think it's not good, because I don't actually think that, oh, they're gonna kill it for me, it's cool, because I don't think that classical music is better than other music, and that claiming to be related to classical music gets you more credit, I think, is actually super gross. Why are we placing the glands here? Oh, I know why. We're placing the glands here so we can draw out the, like, super queen, and then get into a big massive fight. That's what's going on here. Just yeah. I mean the show where teens have kids. 16 and Pregnant is the name of that show. 16 and Pregnant is the name of that show. Music videos are more fun than 16 and Pregnant. Right. Yeah. I know that. Yeah. That is actually, I think, on VH1. Oops, pardon me. I think a lot of those shows are actually on VH1 now. I think 16 and Pregnant is super exploitative, and it makes me very, very concerned, but it makes them money in a way that playing music videos by Elton John makes them less money. That's all. Just noting it. So video may have killed the radio star, but Mammon murdered the music television. Yes. Netflix was fine when they were the DVD rental company. There was legal jack shite and shite companies could do about that. But when they got into streaming was the thorny part. Yeah, right. Because it's a new technology. People decide they're going to do new things with it. Never watched. That's why I don't know the name. Yes. I have watched it because I try to keep up on things and see what things are. And that show, 16 and Pregnant, makes me very, very concerned. Teen Mom 2 makes me very, very concerned. Because here's something about people who are 16 and pregnant. They are minors, which means someone has to sign off allowing them to be on TV, their parents. And many of these 16 and pregnant people are poor and don't have good relationships with their parents. And I just feel like they also probably don't have good lawyers, and MTV has good lawyers. So I'm just kind of worried about what looks like a bunch of exploitation happening. That's all. I worry about that show. Yeah, and Teen Mom. I'm sure that Manta Queen will greet you an audience. I hope so. I just sit and wonder why there are condoms. The thing is, Ice Bunny, you have to remember that not everybody has the same education or access to things that you might. And so I think that there's a lot of things that happen that can result in teen pregnancy that are complicated, and I think it's important to be empathetic, right, about people who are in different life circumstances and different situations. PH says, I remember the first season where a mom realizes that one of her daughters has special needs, and no, that can't be right. She's just growing up still. Yeah, that just broke me. There was some real pain. Totally. Your best bet is just don't watch TV. I mean, we live in a world where the biggest shows are things like Dr. Pimple Popper or 90 Day Fiancé about mail order brides. Yeah, and as Rissa points out, U.S. sex ed is spotty, right? Like, what kind of sex ed you get is very spotty. And I think my sex ed was not good, but I think it was better than people got later when they went to abstinence-only education. There's like a whole move that the only way you should teach young people about having sex is by teaching them not to have sex, and that's the education system.
I thought I'd storm in here in a rage
and
exterminate all these bugs and everything would be all right in the end. But I ain't. I'm mostly just empty. A little sad, maybe. First night Hayes and I spent in here, we knew it was home.
Oh.
Safe. It's got a nice chill to it.
It's your old home.
It doesn't stink of sulfur.
Yeah. pH is, it's spotty, and they don't tell you what the spots are. Do you need medicine? You don't know. If X as spotty, you may need some medical help of a cream of some kind. Yeah. No, I mean, this is the thing that, first off, the United States is is very particular as a country when it comes to sex. We are both puritanical and also like one of the number one producers of pornography in the world, right? So like we're this really strange dichotomy, and most of our education is done not only on a state level but also in a local district level. So the education you get in one city might be radically different than the education you get in a different city, just based on, because our schools are also funded through property taxes. So if you live in a town with a lot of rich people with really rich houses, you're going to have a richer school. But if you live in a poor neighborhood, then you'll have a bad school, right? Like a poorer school. The teachers might be good, but you'll have a poorer school because we fund our education through property taxes. And then what happens in that education is also dependent on local school districts and state mandates. But if you go to a private school, they can do whatever they want. You don't, like, the teachers don't even, like, the school doesn't have to even be accredited. It can have no accreditation whatsoever, but it's private. So you can, all sorts of things can happen there. Origami Shurkin says, I mean, my sister and brother-in-law just had 2 babies born literally a year apart because their birth control failed, even though they were using it. Yep. Sometimes stuff happens even when you're trying to be responsible. That's true. I mean, yes, I will turn up the game volume up. Thank you. I will do so. I will. B Wright says, sorry, overlapped as typing solely. No worries. And I think also there are a lot of things to remember. So things that I think are very interesting. That's the one for women. The one for men, they just try to shut down because you can't waste money on the poor. Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, you may not know this, and I think this is very interesting. We're going to just let her talk, by the way. That condom failure rates vary based on country. Condom failure rates in the United States are higher than they are, for example, in places with better sex education. Because some people condoms are more likely to fail if you have not been taught how to use them properly. And again, we have our sex education in the United States is very hit and miss. I have friends who had kids 3, 4, and 5 all on different forms of birth control. Yeah. Ice Penny says, in 8th grade, I was informed what all the bits and bobs are called. And in 10th grade, they dragged us to Sex of Samfund. We learned how to put condoms on bananas. Yeah. So when I was so we're about the same age. And when I was in high school, we were in the middle of the AIDS crisis, right? Like the AIDS crisis was just like exploding. And so first off, my sex ed was not sex ed. It was anatomy, right? We learned parts of the body. They're like, so here are fallopian tubes. Here's an ovary. Here's a uterus. Here are testes. Testes produce sperm. And then also the fallopian tubes, they put out eggs. And then my sex ed said, if somehow a sperm gets in contact with an egg, then you will get pregnant. That was my sex ed. There was no sex in my sex ed because they thought that would be inappropriate for children. And when in the middle of the AIDS crisis that they brought in AIDS educators to talk about safe sex, our school district lost their minds and decided in the end that they would not be allowed to put a condom on a banana because that would be inappropriate for children. We were 16, 17. And so we were not allowed. So again, never taught how to put on a condom, never actually taught about sex at all, including what does or doesn't feel good, what is or what isn't safe. And I was going to school before the move towards abstinence only sex ed, where that was, I think, George W. Bush really did the push for abstinence only, where your sex ed was don't have sex because you'll die. You know what I mean? So like, California somehow. And you would never want to get an A in the sex ed test in biology class. Yeah, and Crohn's experience matches mine, and I know that it got worse, and there are some places were better, some places were worse. So a lot of people just don't have good sex. Falcon says similar experiences and 10 years later. Yeah, and a lot of people don't have good sex education. Scabby Neck had sex ed in the late 90s in Pennsylvania. Oh, Falcon also California, and also the United States has a lot of it was pretty solid banana demonstration, everything. That I'm glad, right? Also, just a side note, for people who are not old, like some of us here, it was illegal to have condom ads on television when we were growing up. They only had like the first condom ads on TV in like 91 maybe, and that was because of the AIDS crisis. They're like, we should probably put condom ads on TV, but they like it, like you didn't even get condom ads until like the early 90s. So I mean, just because he's not getting it doesn't mean people should not know about sex, except that there were like the reasoning was sex is sinful and you should not have sex out of marriage. And since you should not be having sex out of marriage, there's really no reason to teach people about it in school. One of the other reasons was if you teach teenagers about sex, then they will have sex. But if you don't teach them about sex, then they won't have sex. Another reason was sex is not something that should be taught in schools. That should be something that parents should teach their kids if the parents want to. And if the parents do not want their kids knowing about sex, then their kids shouldn't know about sex because they may not want their kids to know about sex for religious reasons or whatever. Like we have a very, like the United States is very into certain kinds of things. And also you had to get, like when I was going to school, you had to have your parents' permission to take the sex ed class. And if you did not get your parents' permission, you would not learn sex ed, right? Like your parents could just say, no, I don't want my kids learning sex ed. And then you wouldn't, right? So like, there's like, you know, it's important to note that not everybody in the US gets the same kind of sex ed as other people. Mine was mid-late 90s, more like, yeah. AIDS freaked them out enough to acknowledge the existence of condoms. People think about marriage in such a weird way. They do. Not the way my parents did, I'll tell you what. And then when you marry and sex is bad, divorce follows. Ice Bunny, you have to remember also that up until second wave feminism in the 70s, you could not get a divorce because in the United States because the sex was bad. You had to have a legal reason to get a divorce, and you had to prove that legal reason in court. And if you could not prove one of the established legal reasons that would allow you to get a divorce, you would not get divorced. They would not allow you to get divorced. Not wanting to be married to somebody or having bad sex was not a legal reason to get a divorce. And actually, I think New York State was one of the last states to enact no-fault divorce laws. I'm pretty sure they've done it now, but I don't think it was that long ago. I think it was pretty recent that New York State got no-fault divorce. I'm just noting, right? B Wright says, I'm sure some of the educators were worried that if you practice putting condoms on bananas, it may give them dangerous ideas about where to put them. Indeed. Falcon says, health was mandatory for me, but that might be because it was later, probably, yeah. But now you can, says Ice Bunny. Yeah, but I think in New York it was only very recently. But also remember, there are religions that still frown on divorce where, like, I mean, Catholics still can't get divorced, right? So if you're Catholic, you religiously, you're not supposed to get divorced if you're devout. You can get an annulment from the Vatican, although most people don't get annulments from the Vatican because what rando's going to get an annulment? So again, right? So I looked it up. New York got no fault divorce in August 2010. There, thank you, Skymanek. 2010 is when it happened. Like that's only 10 years ago. Right? I mean, you have to think about that for a moment. You have to think about that. Origami says, I was homeschooled. My mom's an OB registered nurse. Oh, that's good. So I got a lot of information on anatomy and biological functions. Oh, we lost our connection. We got to bring it back. Bring it back. Sing it back. Bring it back. Bring it back to me. Also, I'm probably gonna have to delete that VOD with all the songs on it because they'll probably kill it at some point, but you know, it's a thing. But also a lot of abstinence until marriage. My ex-husband didn't even have good anatomical knowledge, so our honeymoon was interesting. See, Origami Shuriken is pointing out something I think is really important as well. A lot of people in the United States also don't get really good information about their bodies. And how they work and what they do, because there's a lot of shame regarding sex and sexuality in the United States, even today. Time of Gifts says, hey, Time of Gifts, in Republic of Ireland, condoms were illegal, full stop. And a married couple was prosecuted by the Supreme Court, by the Attorney General Circle 1978 for having using condoms. The state won. That is amazing, and not in a good way. But like, and this is the thing, like we have to sort of recognize that people are coming from very different circumstances, including sometimes really shame-based situations as well. Rissa says the lack of understanding of female anatomy shown in our legislative system is a direct result of the crappy sex ed. Right. Rissa's pointing out that we had some people who are politicians who said things that show they have no idea how women's bodies works at all. Like one of those politicians said that basically women cannot get pregnant if they've been sexually assaulted because women's bodies shut that down, is what he said, because he clearly has no idea how women's bodies work. And a lot of people don't know how women's bodies work. Like at all, including women. I mean, it's better now, but one of the we think about like 70s second wave feminism, one of the big things, there were a bunch of things that second wave feminism did that were like really, really important. And one of the things they did was there was a book that came out called Our Bodies, Ourselves that taught women about their bodies, which nobody was doing. Like taught them like what the clitoris is and what it's about and all the like all sorts of things about women's bodies that just were not going to be, you just wouldn't know at all otherwise. It's intense. B Right says, well, I'm sure the Catholic Church will work on a way on monetizing divorce at some point like they do sin and guilt. Sorry, I just don't buy some of their dogma. Yeah, Vulpa says, for most of the history of this country, the more illegal to kill your wife than get a divorce. It's more illegal to kill your wife than get a divorce. Yeah. That's 100% true. Hey, Moswolf. How are you? Hi, Chipper and Chat. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. Finally getting to stop by after watching the holiday special State of Affairs. I got so hooked I had to follow. Thank you for being here. Welcome in. We're playing
Monarch folks
The Outer Worlds.
Not because of the smell or the grittiness.
But we're talking about sex ed right now.
For the coughing. It's because there's no escaping it. It's life here, and there ain't anything you can do about it. But here, somehow the sulfur never made it.
Huh.
The nights we spent in here felt like vacations. So we started building.
I just saw a tweet, Paladin Hulk says, I just saw a tweet from some guy commenting on a picture of a tampon, called the picture obscene because the curvature of the string was suggestive. Right. I mean, let's just a couple more things, right? So I was in the Army, and also it's important to note that if you live in a really small town, getting access to condoms might be difficult because there's probably only one or two places to get it, and the people working there know your parents, right? And they would then tell your parents, and then you might get in trouble. Like it's very tricky. Also, a lot of people have a lot of miseducation about how things work. And I'm going to tell you 3 stories that will exemplify how things might be different. One, when that guy, I told this story, but some of you have not heard it. When I was in the Army, there was a guy, we were doing motor pool, we were fixing the Humvee, and our sergeant was like, hey, new guy, go to supply and get a box of fallopian tubes so we can, fix the Humvee. And so he went to get the box of fallopian tubes to supply, and we didn't see him for like an hour. And so we called supply, company supply, and we're like, hey, where's the guy we sent over for the box of fallopian tubes? Haha. And he was like, oh yeah, that was so funny. I sent him off to battalion supply. So we called battalion supply, and battalion supply was like, aha, that's so funny. We sent him off to brigade supply to get the box of fallopian tubes. We called brigade supply. Brigade supply is like, yeah, so funny. We sent him off to the hospital on base to get the box of fallopian tubes. And of course, we did not know who to call in the hospital. So he finally comes back and he's like, haha, really funny. But the joke worked because he did not know what fallopian tubes were. He thought they were something you would find in a car, in a Humvee. And do you know what I mean? Like, so the point is that our sex education was so deficient that we could pull a joke on him that way. Yeah, the aversion from adults about sex, everything surrounding it really doesn't help anyone. Yes, Mosel, that is completely true. And also another example would be, I mean, I was in the army with a woman who did not know she was pregnant until she gave birth. She had no idea. She didn't know she was pregnant. I remember, like, it was yeah. She let me see. I'm gonna talk. Yeah, no, Moswolf, it's 100% true.
Sublight folk to help. That's how we met Anders and Opal. They stuck around after our contract was up. Opal liked camping. Anders liked chasing her tail. 4 of us for a while.
I'm off center.
Scraping together what bits we could to build our home. Then came Rebecca, a sawbones out of the Cascadia survivors, who took a kindness to Hayes. And Clara, her little sister. I'll admit I wasn't keen on taking her on at first, but for a teenager, she was surprisingly capable.
Better. There. Vulpa says that happens more than you would like to think. It's true. And the thing is, I mean, also she had no idea how her body worked, right? She grew up she grew up like a lot of people in the army I was in the army with, in a rural space without great education, like a lot of like shame about the body. And I remember when I knew her, she hadn't given birth yet. So in the army, you have to take a physical fitness test every 6 months, and you have to pass your PT test. And part of the PT test is a weigh-in where they check to make sure that you are not overweight. And during her first weigh-in, she was overweight and also over fat. And if you're overweight and over fat, you have 6 months to get back into sort of military standards. And if you are not within military standards within the next 6 months, then they kick you out of the military. And so she missed her tape test. And then 6 months later, she failed it a second time. And so when I came into that unit, she was in the process. Hey, Time of Gifts. Time of Gifts. Don't even apologize for missing the stream. 6 a.m. is ridiculous. And so she was in the process of being kicked out of the military for being over fat at the time. And of course, she was drinking and smoking and being ridiculous like 19 and 20-year-olds in the army often are. And then she was, I don't know, she was doing whatever, and she just had like this like pain in her stomach, and it was like really bad. So she decided to go to the infirmary to check it out. She goes to the infirmary, and then she gives birth to a baby. And she had no idea. And she was like a 19-year-old single mom. And I was like, in Germany overseas without any family with her. And I was like, are you going to be okay? And she's like, yes, because I've always loved dolls. And now I will have something that I can dress up and will always love me. And I was like, oh no, oh no, this is bad. But you know what? That's just what that's the thing. Yeah, because she had no idea. She had no idea she was pregnant, and she had no support. And she, you know what I mean? And like, she wasn't dumb. It's not her fault, but she clearly was failed by systems that did not educate her on things. Yeah. I hope she did too, but I will tell you what, she was a single mom who was 19 overseas and had no support, so it was not easy. And she was in the army. Do you know what I mean? Like it was not an easy thing at all. And yeah, Scabby Neck says, my half-brother told me having a kid wasn't going to change his life while he was in the middle of the adoption process. Yeah. But also I think about, like, there are just a lot of people who are not well educated on how their bodies work or anything. Spoiler, it did. Yes. Moswolf says, that's a heck of a lot stacked against her. Yeah, I do hope she grew into it. I couldn't imagine. And I mean, I just hope that she was, and the thing is, because her parents were working class, they could not afford to just fly to Germany. Do you know what I mean? And she still had like another, and oh, by the way, because she gave birth, they stopped the process to kick her out of the army because, right, like she no longer, it was that they figured out what was going on, so she stayed in the army. But she had like another year or so, another like maybe year in some, in Germany, and like without any support, and her parents couldn't afford to come and be with her, so it was like really hard for her. It was really hard, and she didn't. Yeah, it was really hard for her. Yeah, my mom's sister did not even give my cousins any version of the talk. Yeah. Jer says, okay, so presumably she had at least one physical while pregnant. She did not have a physical while pregnant. Not one. Because yeah, no. Like I think we had to have a physical once a year, and she didn't. Like she didn't have, like I think she probably had her physical in the beginning of like, because it was like yeah, she didn't get the physical. And also sometimes her physicals are not that great. Yeah, honestly might have been good since she was still in, since at least that gave her medical access for her. Yes, I mean she got free medical care, right? I mean, so being in the army meant that she got free medical care because the army has free healthcare. So she got that. If she weren't in the army, I would just think financially it would have been awful for her. Ice Bunny says, my in-laws mom worked at the job center, and she told me that some of the clients she had that have a hard time to get a job training, get kids to have a reason in life. Well, but also the people I was in the army with were from a cultural space where that is just what you did, right? You got married and you had kids at 18. And if you didn't, there was something wrong with you. Like, to be worried about.
She had a head for numbers, helped us trade hides for food and materials, negotiated contracts. Turned out to be mighty useful. Clara, Hayes, Anders, Rebecca, Opal, and me. 6 folks, 1 name.
Oh,
One family.
Charon.
Charon.
Got it.
Despite Monarch trying to kill us day in and day out, we managed to belong.
So again, right? Like I was in the one of my was it my platoon leader, lieutenant last name I won't say, would come into work every Monday and talk about all the women he had sex with, like just all the women he had sex with over the weekend. By the way, this was like 1992, 93, again, middle of the AIDS crisis. And he would just like go on and on about all the random women he was having sex with at work. And I did not want to know. And he would just go on and on about it. And I remember one day I was like, hey, LT, you are using condoms, right? Like I asked him, I was like, because, you know, by the way, I'd been in the army longer than he had. He was an LT, I was a sergeant, whatever. So I was like, you are using condoms, right, LT? And his response to me was, oh no, I don't need to use condoms because I only have sex with women from the Midwest. And women from the Midwest don't have AIDS because that's a thing that like coastal people have. And I was like, that's not how that works. Like, that's just not how that works. And you should use a condom. Right? Like he really honestly believed that you would not have AIDS if you were from like the heartland, the good parts of America, because the good parts of America are God-fearing and not sinful, and so therefore it's okay to have rando sex with people every single weekend, multiple times, all over the place, as long as they're from the Midwest. And I was like, that's not how it works. And I had to educate him on that, right? He was not educated on that, right? Still happened in 97 to 012 Trooper. Had a couple of folks that are like that. Yeah, right. And I'm sure it still happens today in parts, right? In parts of the country. And Barentor notes you don't get physicals with a PT test. You don't. You just take your test and then they do a weigh-in. Yep. And so you have to usually go to, you have to get a physical once a year. But also if you don't get the physical, it's not like you can linger, because people in the military are often encouraged to develop an attitude where you just don't go to the doctor ever. That there's sort of an attitude like if you go to the doctor that maybe you're a malingerer. So people will often not go to the doctor when which is not healthy. But like people, yeah. Anyway, it's free, and you have to go. You usually have to go once a year, and if you don't, they'll like get on you. But people will often just not go to the doctor. My in-laws' mom worked at the job center, and she told me that some of the clients. Oh yeah, I read that one. My only concern, and his only concern, was with AIDS, not leaving the woman with a surprise. Yep, that is correct. He didn't care, or all the other STDs. Yep. And people from Texas don't get the coronavirus. I mean, we have very interesting ideas sometimes. No time for preventive care, only go if something is wrong, basically, yeah. Military folks that spend too much time at the doctor are looked down on as lazy. Barentor is correct. Like, I mean, there's a reason why today still I don't go to the doctor early enough. Like, I don't go to the doctor unless it's really bad. But also, full disclosure, there are a lot of people in the United States who don't have health insurance, or whose health insurance is very bad, who don't go to the doctor because it's just too expensive. They won't go unless it's really, really bad. So there's a way in which not getting medical care is also common. It's common. Yeah. Because our sex ed isn't improved enough and kids look to the internet, which, well, at least they can go to the internet, because when we were younger, there was no internet to go to find out that stuff, really. Origami Shurkin says, my ex had the opposite problem in that he was more concerned that I might get pregnant than he was about using protection when he was sleeping around. Yeah, you know, not good. Star Trek, disease. I can see why that didn't get made. Gold bricking was the worst idea ever invented, yeah. For example, I haven't seen a doctor in 17 years. Yeah, I mean, this is, again, people, like, when people are like, oh, why didn't you go to the doctor? I was like, well, sometimes you couldn't afford to go to the doctor. And this is a problem that's happened in the US as well, that a lot of rural hospitals are being shut down. You might live in a part of the country. I think that especially Western Europeans, have no concept of how remote parts of the United States are. Some parts of the United States are really remote, like remote. You could be a really long way away from a hospital, away from things. We have some really remote parts of this country that you can't even really imagine. And I mean, yeah. I have no need to get told that I'm fat, and I experience way too often fat biased doctors. Try to find a better doctor, Ice Bunny. Because even if I can afford a doctor's visit, says Krellin, there's no way I could afford the treatment for whatever's wrong with me, so I'm happier not being sure. Right? That happens so often. It happens so often. Unstable Dio says, because it was solely your responsibility as protection. See, this is what I'm saying. Yes. Barentor says, there are parts of Appalachia and the Great Plains where the nearest actual hospital is several hours drive. Yeah, that's right. And that doesn't take the stress on the system from a pandemic. Yep, that's Rissa. And PH says, yeah, it was bizarre to me when I visited a school that I needed to get a ride from people to go anywhere. There was no public transport throughout the day. Yeah. Also, even within cities, we have things like food deserts where, like, especially in poor neighborhoods, grocery stores there won't be grocery stores. So if you live in a poor neighborhood, it'll be very difficult for you to get fresh vegetables. So a lot of poor people have very bad nutrition, and people will say, oh, it's because we'll blame them. But there's no fresh food where they live. They would have to go miles to get to a grocery store where they could get fresh vegetables. And they probably don't have a car. And it might be too expensive. So there are a lot of ways in which poverty in the United States impacts people's health, and the choices they can make and what kind of education they get, that we should not be blaming them for. We should not be like, oh, because they're doing the best they can in maybe not a great situation. Food deserts are a thing in rural and urban areas in the US of Forsha. Yeah, that's right. I mean, yeah. Origami Shurkin says, there are many, many reasons why I ended that relationship, and I'm in a much happier place now. I'm happier that you're not in that relationship as well, Origami Shurkin. It did not sound like the ideal relationship for you. And fresh veggies are more expensive. Yeah. Rissa says, yeah, downtown San Diego isn't big on grocery stores. Brown says, fresh food is fucking expensive. If I don't eat my fresh produce in a day or two, it's ruined and I have to throw it out. Or I can buy prepared foods that will sit for a month or more just fine. Right, especially if you're single. There's just a lot of ways in which it's hard. And I think a little bit of empathy for the working poor would be nice, right? Some people, says Jer, only have food deserts, desserts in their food deserts. Yeah. Barentor notes, when the only place to get food is a gas station, people aren't eating healthy. Yeah, or a liquor store, or like a little bodega. And that's hard, right? Yeah. And sure, we have also, yeah, right? I mean, I was remembering there was with these, I was in the army and there were these two and they were talking, and one of them was like, oh no, I just started my period. Do you have like a tampon? The other one's like, no, I don't have a tampon. And I was like, oh, I have an OB. I can get you an OB if you want. And like, oh, I can't use an OB because OBs are gross. Because for those of you who don't know the difference between like, say, a Tampax and an OB, so Tampaxes are sort of like old school tampons that come in a cardboard applicator, like kind of like a long cardboard applicator, and the tampon itself is so there's a thing called toxic shock syndrome for those people who do not know women's bodies very well. And toxic shock syndrome can happen when little bits of your tampon are left in your body for a long time, and it can like cause problems. Like it can be very, very dangerous. And some tampons are, especially like the old school old school Tampax, are made in such a way that they're more likely to leave little bits of, especially if the tampons are bleached or have chemicals in them, like it's bad. So they're more likely to leave what in Germany they would say Fussel, like, I don't know what the English word is, Fussel. I don't know what the, or the entire, or the entire thing might be like, yeah, there can be a lot of chemicals, right? So my German friends were like, yeah, don't use Tampax, use OB because they don't have any chemicals in them. You're right. And they're actually sort of made in a way that's healthier for you. And shrapnel, debris, right? Like, yeah. But the thing about OB is that you have to self-insert them with your finger, whereas with Tampax, you don't have to because there's like a little inserter thing. And I was like, well, I could get you an OB. And they said, oh no, we could never use an OB because then you'd have to touch your body, and that's gross. Like touching yourself is like gross, and I would never want to touch my body because that's so horrible. And I was like, ooh, oh, okay, well, but like it's because, I think OB was the one that was the opposite of that. In Denmark, you cannot choose your doctor. You can pick a name from a list, and when you get your health card stolen, the people in the town office will not give you a new one. And I had to insist and pay about $50 to get a new one. Oof, terrible. But also, wash your hands. Yeah, just wash your hands. It's fine. Like dudes who won't wipe their ass clean because your ass beetle wins. That's another great example. Like it's true. Like there are people who think that it's gay to clean your body, so they don't. That's not healthy. But someone has told them stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like someone has told them some things. Yeah, right. I'm just noting that some people have not been given like. And the thing is, these two women I was talking to had such shame around their bodies. Further, they were the same group of people who were talking about. The conversation started when they were talking about shaving their armpits, and they were talking about how, of course, they always shave their armpits because it is gay to not be a walking toxic pile. Yep. People can be so squeamish about their own bodies because they don't know any better. Yeah, right. But also because they've been told that their bodies are shameful, right? They've been told their bodies are shameful, and so then they internalize that shame. Random gamer looking for Outer Worlds is going to be so confused, but it's on the screen. And in Germany, you can pick and choose your doctor, or even a specialist. Yeah. I mean, let's see. I'm sorry they aren't here to see us kick some Manta ass. Let's do this. Tell you what don't belong, the bugs. Let's clear them out, shall we? You were a family. I'm sorry they're gone, Yoka. That's what I'm going to say.
Me too, Captain. But I'm starting to think that maybe I found another.
You have. We are
Now let's
family.
get to shooting before I get all sentimental.
I'm ready to oh, we've got things incoming. We're gonna shoot the things, by the way. Also, okay, we're gonna do a lot of shooting right now. It's gonna be cool. There's gonna be shooting. Woo! Hi. Also, ooh, I should probably do like a wrong button. Sorry, wrong button. We should. We're shooting. Oh, hi, Mantisaurs. There's some I think my friends are all dead. Maybe. I have a special. No, that's not the special button. I have a special move. No, everybody's dead. Nobody has special moves. Everybody's dead. Don't want to die, but it's cool. I feel like it's we're gonna be fine. We're gonna just kill this Manta Queen. My friends are gonna stand back up again, and also I think I'm on fire. Okay. I was food addiction. I pressed the wrong button. Ain't nobody got time for a dirty ass. Yes. There was a Marine in my platoon we had to wash himself, and he got in a lot of trouble for smoking in his barracks room, and we keep an ashtray in his clothes in a drawer. It's wild what some folks will live with. Oh, yeah. You did let her drink for a while. Yeah. She's just sipping that flask. I started up a new playthrough of New Vegas. I love that. I haven't played New Vegas yet because I haven't. That's the one that's actually the next one. I finished Fallout 3. And then I really wanted to play New Vegas because it was by Obsidian, and I really like Obsidian's work, which is doing this one. So I haven't played New Vegas yet. And some of the things I didn't really like about Fallout 3, which has to do with narrative, I heard that New Vegas was better at. So I really want to play New Vegas, and I have it for my Xbox, which is in storage. Yes. Dear Curls, yeah, New Vegas is the best one. PH says that Fallout 3 is very meh, which is really interesting because I actually heard that as well. Let's see. You can't seem to stop yourself from eating even food that's bland or horribly flavored. Not eating often will cause withdrawals. Hey, I should take the food addiction perk, right? I should take the food addiction perk. This is perfect because then it will force me to eat food, right? And if I eat food, then I'll be getting rid of things in my inventory. Boom. Right? Right. But I'll be wait, how often do you have to eat? You just oh. So you're saying that I should reject the perk? Everyone's like, you should look, I've not taken any of these flaws yet. I'm gonna take this one. I'm just gonna take this one as like a experiment to see what they're like. And now I'm just going to eat a lot and get a new perk. Yeah, I never got into New Vegas. It was way too slow of a start. This is my first one, so I feel like at least I can say that I did it. Also, note, I'm going to change my mic placement. Let's see what we have. This is solo. I don't want solo stuff. A small amount of melee damage you deal. I don't do melee. Area and effect of plasma damage dealt to you is reduced. That seems good. You're not going to eat a lot. You're going to forget to eat a lot. I'm going to try. Refill the beverage. I hope they'll give me like a sign that I'm in trouble. Your range attacks reduce the target's armor rating by 1. Oh, okay, that sounds really good. I should get that one. Because, when you use the inhaler, any downed companions are revived. Oh no, that's the best one to have. I should help my friends, right? I should help my friends. Also, exploding headshots seem nice. But, I mean, many of these seem nice, but I'm going to help my friends because I care about my friends. Also, it encourages me to use more stuff. So, boom. I accept it. Yeah, alive allies are good. I like it. So I have these like feelings about Fallout 3. And his daily bread. Oh, reason, not the need. Yes. Although I just finished the Dead Money DLC today, and geez, that was a fantastic DLC that was also completely frustrating. Let's give, what do we have? 20% chance to reset ability cooldown, harmful status effect, showtime damage. Increase the damage dealt by this companion for a short time after performing their companion ability. Sure, we'll do that. We'll do that. Boom. Oh, sorry, we've got another perk. Oh, I have not perked up Felix at all. Long Winter. 20% duration of status effects inflicted by companion abilities. Stand your ground, +3 armor rating for 10 seconds. Second Wind. When they're down during combat, they heal back some health and continue fighting. This effect has a long cooldown, 15 minutes. Yeah, we'll just keep everybody up. Keep them all alive. If they're down, they can't do damage. None of their damage things are relevant if they are unconscious. So, yes. Okay. Great. Repair everything. Great. We're awesome. We're gonna loot and chat. Narratively, Dead Money is my favorite when it comes to actually playing it. Old World Blues is a better one. So I have a lot of, I will tell you that the Bethesda RPGs have influenced my thinking and theory about tabletop RPGs quite a lot, in that I did not enjoy, I really did, Krellin did not, but I really enjoyed Morrowind, but I really did not enjoy Oblivion much at all. I found Oblivion to be not exciting. To put it that way, I found Oblivion to be not exciting. What did Trooper kill? His companions mostly. Fair. Yeah, I love Morrowind, but I also did enjoy Oblivion. Skyrim, I didn't really enjoy. Oh, that's interesting. I've not yet played. Look, so I have a problem. I recognize this problem is ridiculous. I recognize it. I don't know if you could tell I have this problem when playing video games. Maybe you could, maybe you couldn't. Some of you probably know about this problem. But I started as a kid on Morrowind, so that was my jam for years. Oh, yeah. And I can tell you why I liked Morrowind and why Oblivion didn't work for me, but I played Skyrim. I'm not sure I enjoyed it. Yeah, so I have this problem of a really hard time quitting video games unless I finish them. I don't necessarily have to do 100%, but I have a really hard time quitting. And the thing about Oblivion is that I haven't finished it. I haven't finished it, and because I haven't finished it, I haven't started Skyrim, because each time I think about starting Skyrim, I think, oh, I should finish Oblivion. And I mean, I think in my entire life of playing video games, I have only not finished hoarding all the things in your inventory. Hoarding all the things in my inventory is indeed a problem of mine that is very, very clear if you see me play an Elder Scrolls game, because that is a thing that is, yeah. Trooper, if you have a problem and no one else can help, you can find them. Maybe you can hire the A-team. I should hire the A-team. Yeah, maybe they can finish my games for me. Oblivion felt too big with too little variety in all the many things to do in that world. Skyrim solved that with a map that felt smaller and a greater variety of stories to tell. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, dangerous when a game lets you loot everything. Yeah. Did you do the Dark Brotherhood quest line? And I did. If yes, then consider it. Oh, I did actually. I finished that was one of the more interesting parts of Oblivion, was the Dark Brotherhood quest line. At least with Skyrim, with all the DLCs, you can get hours for storage. Oh, houses for storage. I like that. It's weird. If I'm going off doing my own thing, well, the narrative is telling me to do something else, I have no problem. But when the narrative tells me to go faff about for a while, I'm like, but why? Oh, didn't I say you will still be playing Outer Worlds next year? No, you're right. You were correct. You're correct. You were not wrong, Ice Bunny. And for me, it's actually about... do you hear that? I think we have to go outside. Oh no, we just had to talk to Nyoka. That's cool. And also you can also get houses in Morrowind by murdering people and taking their house, which, you know, is a thing that people... I'm gonna put my gun away. Oops. Nope, apparently not.
Stupid. By all accounts, we should have left well enough alone, but that also makes it right. Captain, thank you.
You're welcome. Oh. Yeah, you're welcome, Nyoka.
Do you mind if we rest a spell before we head out?
Sure.
I'd like to bury Opal and Clara proper before I lay everyone's medallions to rest.
Of course. Of course, although I think you should hold on to medallions. I'll say that.
What? Why? Them's painful memories, Captain.
Beetlewind says, I have the mountain you can build on more from House Hlalu. I was also House Hlalu, Beetlewinds. High five. Boom. High five. House Hlalu. So I will tell you why I think, for me, Morrowind worked in a way that Oblivion didn't. And it has really impacted how... Because I like to run sandbox RPGs, and I learned a lot about what I personally like and don't like in sandbox design from the difference between Morrowind and Oblivion. And also, Fallout 3 had the same problem for me as Oblivion did. For me, there were some similar problems. You can get a Mushroom House tower as well, but those mages out Telvanni were slavers, so I set fire to them. Me too. I was like, yeah, no. Also, amazingly well written. Like in terms of like the concept was really amazing. So creepy, but the concept was really good. For example, what I thought was really amazing about the mages in the Telvanni mages is that they live in these towers, but the towers don't have stairways. And they are all up on the top floor. So the only way to get to see them is to be able to levitate. So if they just don't have time for you, if you're not a mage, basically, they're real chauvinists. And their chauvinism was manifested in the architecture, like very well thought out. The cultural work was really, really good. You could also just join a guild, but sure, murder's always on the table. I did not murder people for their houses. I got my houses in the non-murdery way. I'm back with, root beer. I love root beer, Origami Shuriken. Oh, then I really want to see you try out Skyrim. I'd like to see what you're, I mean, and the thing is, if I'm given permission not to finish Oblivion, then I will play Skyrim, but I have to have permission I have to have permission. Because I will feel a little bit guilty. Good old House Hlalu. We are slightly less xenophobic than the others. Yeah, and so wait, let me see. They'll remind you both the good and the bad, not just bad. They'd like to be remembered once in a while, even if it hurts. Yes.
Huh. That ain't a bad point. All right, Captain.
I'm glad that I have permission. Thank you. Good. All right. I don't remember much about House Redoran. They were just generic swords and honor idiots. Yeah. Wizard Style says, Morrowind has the best writing out of the Elder Scrolls series by a distance. The houses and also the entanglement between the guild and the whole secret guild you can find are... Oblivion had the best quest design. Skyrim has funny physics and is pretty, although very gray. I'm not allowed to play it. Hey, Artie Snack! So the thing about... so I will tell you, I think in my whole life, I can name you the games I haven't finished. The first game I did not finish was Ninja Gaiden. That was the first one I did not finish. And I didn't finish, and I got to the last boss battle. I got to the very last boss battle. And I worked on trying to defeat that boss for a very long time. Not like a couple of days, but probably a couple of months trying to like defeat that boss battle. And I just could not. Oh, wow. Oh. One of the very few who deserve better. Opal Oubliette. Rebecca Hodges, at the very least, you came back to us in the end. Anders Wadsworth, even Raptidons and women. Between Raptidons and women, he died doing what he loved, chasing tail. Yoka. Jackson Hayes, his most egregious crime was having the gall to die before me. Clara Hodges, the closest thing to a sister that I ever got. Aww. Aww. Trooper, 96% of all Ninja Gaiden players have never beaten that boss, including me. Yeah, I just couldn't finish it. And I know what happened. Ninja Gaiden was super, super hard, and finishing games is overrated. Thank you. Krellin says, I couldn't find any of this stuff in Morrowind because the dude in the second town just told me to faff off about with no direction. That's fair. Artie said I enjoyed Oblivion. I will tell you why it didn't work for me. Like, I think that people, first off, it was objectively more beautiful than Morrowind because graphics had advanced and there were some really cool things about it. But I will tell you what didn't work for me, which doesn't mean it won't work for anything, but I can tell you what it was. Morrowind is the one game this series where the weirdest aspects of Elder Scrolls lore leaked into the actual game itself, like with Vivek knowing he's a video game character, etc. Oblivion and Skyrim have it all well, but in all of its background. Also, I remember the designers, before Skyrim came out, the designers said, oh, we understand that people like Morrowind better than Oblivion, so we're going to and we understood the reason why they liked Oblivion more was because it was just weird, and so we're going to make sure we have that. And Skyrim was like, no, that wasn't why I liked Morrowind best. It wasn't because it was weird. I don't think you understand what made Oblivion really interesting, and it wasn't that it was weird. Come on, designers. They did not talk to me. I left my NES on for like a month straight to keep trying that boss fight. I called the tip line. So yeah, me neither. I just had, and I think one of the problems I had was that I had specialized in nunchucks rather than swords. Like that's what I had practiced the entire game with, was getting really good at nunchucks. And that boss fight was not a fight for nunchucks. That was a fight, I think, for swords. And I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I tried real hard, but I couldn't do it. Poor Losanto says, I will say that finishing Master Blaster was one of my most memorable game experiences in my entire life. Wizard Style says, getting into Morrowind takes actual effort, and I don't know when you played it, but has not aged well in terms of gameplay and lacks a lot of things that nowadays are just expected, such as, you know, functional map markers. Oh, no, gang. Skyrim and all the plants you can pick up. The hoarding will be epic. Oh, I got a complete edition, but it was before those were called Game of the Year. Oh, yeah. Oh, my... Jer! First off, I just need to pause for a moment and I need to say something. This is really important. I have just been called out by Jer. I want to know why Jer has been stalking me. I want to know how Jer got video footage of me playing both Morrowind and also Oblivion to know that cheese wheels were always a problem, because they weighed like 10 pounds and I always had way too many cheese wheels. And also I was usually not playing a strength-based character. I was usually playing a rogue of some sort, and so my strength was not super high, and cheese wheels were always a problem. Jer, how did you know? How did you know? Jer knows about my cheese wheel problem. We've seen you play Outer Worlds. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Oblivion faces were the literal worst ever, says Moswolf, but also hilarious to just randomize and make the ugliest faces ever. The types of sliders that would change the entire face were hilarious. Imagine changing your lip color and getting your chiseled jawline instead, or bigger eyebrows. That's literally what happened. Yeah, no, it's true. Part of the problem with Morrowind, I think, is that I just fundamentally do not like 3D games. That's fair. That's fair. I think that's totally fair. We're going to walk out of here. Oh, there's stuff to loot, and so we'll loot that before we walk out of here. Okay. I remember that one character in Oblivion who was like, I'm the most beautiful person in the world, and you look at the character model and you just burst out laughing. Yep. I linked the Skyrim video in Discord. Oh, thank you, PH. Kwama eggs. Oh, that was another one. Yeah. The PCs in my Tal'Dorei campaign were always looking for cheese to loot, which is fair. Wizard Style says, you just need to turn them into potions to have their weight become the cheese alchemist you're meant to be. So Wizard Styles also apparently has stalked me playing Oblivion and Morrowind. Jera says, it's because I'm an AI program to calculate Twitch streamers' playstyles. That's fair. So my life in Morrowind and Oblivion was going into a dungeon, killing all the things, looting all the things, including lots of armor, having way too much weight so I can't move anymore. And then, because I was like a rogue who was also an alchemist, because of course I was, because what I loved to do was, I was a bow rogue. Make poison, put poison on, I also made sure I could jump really well, so I'd jump to some like really weird high spot, put poison on my bow, shoot a thing that's far away, and then it would come chasing me, but as it came towards me, it would just start losing health from the poison, and then it would die, and I would laugh. But, so I get bogged down in the middle of the dungeon, and then I make potions to increase my strength so that I can move, and so then I'll make the potions, increase my strength, move until the potion wears out and I can't move anymore, make another potion to increase my strength, move until I can't move anymore, and do that until I can get out of the dungeon, and then I can fast travel to a town and sell my stuff so I can move again. But like, my dungeon crawling was always about being over encumbered and then making potions in order to be able to move. Like, that was my entire life. That was my life. Fallout 4 was the worst for me in terms of hoarding, as everything had some degree of value for breakdown. Oh, Artie Snack, I could imagine that would be a thing. I made a potion in Morrowind that raised my athletics skill to like 9,000 or something ridiculous. I jumped out of the game world and it crashed. That is amazing. Cheese poison? Poison de fromage. Oh, yeah. Trooper was getting 1 XP per GP. He got back into town. Yes. Bone meal armor. So I think we have looted everything. I think we can walk out of here. So I didn't finish Ninja Gaiden. That was the first one I didn't finish. But I suppose I'm in pretty good company there. The next one I didn't finish was, and I'll tell you why. My dungeon crawling was literal crawling because I was over encumbered after the third room and had no strength potions or alchemy. I'm so sorry. Seems similar to the scroll you find in the guy. Oh yeah, that I know that one. Okay, so now I know that I need to run a stream dungeon crawl where I'm super stickler about encumbrance, and Trooper will be the first to sign up. Krellin. Why are you calling me out like this? Because I'm feeling very attacked right now, because this is completely true. What Krellin says. Okay, so quick digression into Dungeons and Dragons for a moment. I will critique Dungeons and Dragons because there are things about Dungeons and Dragons that there are some things about Dungeons and Dragons I just don't prefer, but I think there's nothing inherently wrong with them. There's some things about Dungeons and Dragons that I don't like, but I understand that other people might like them. And there's some things about Dungeons and Dragons that I think are bad and that should not be in the game, right? Those are like, there's like a whole range of things. Because I want to play a game with you. That's fair. I have a house in Skyrim with cabinet of swords. I feel like that hoarding aspect. Yeah. Nightstand full of gemstones. Yes. Beetlewind says, I also made an unarmed build where if you hit me, the armor I was wearing basically exploded outwards. The range of the blast was so high, I could clear entire floors of dungeons just by being punched in the face. Yes. I approve of this. I think this is Byzantium. This is Emerald Vale. And this is Byzantium. So we have to go to Emerald Vale, which is what? What is this? Okay, well, I suppose we'll just fast travel there, I suppose. When the GM metagames, that means the player gets a metagame. So that means Trooper will spend the absolute minimum amount on equipment and all the rest of potions of giant strength. I'd love to play with Trooper, but I don't know that I'd want to be in a dungeon crawl. I want to, it's like, because again, there's a thing I want to say about dungeon crawls. So Trooper, you were done talking about D&D. No, I was going to tell you something about D&D. Yeah. No, I was going to tell you a thing about a thing that I actually really liked about D&D when I played it. That something that I actually enjoyed about D&D back in the day, including dungeon crawls. Depending on what kind of dungeons we're crawling through, Axe, I'm a man of peace. That guy just got immolated by looking at you angrily. A man of peace. Dungeon crawl, but it's all Jeffrey's tubes. That would be good. So So this, I think, was the tricky thing, right? I did not enjoy my experience in first edition Dungeons and Dragons for numerous reasons, many of which had to do with the ways in which, the ways in which there's a very toxic environment that was attached to the game, and also there were just some things about the mechanics I did not like as well, as I'm sure all of you know. But that said, okay, I did not enjoy murder hoboing and no RP. Like, I wanted RP in my game. And from what I've heard, first edition was super brutal, this is what's really interesting. There are things that people would assume that I didn't like about D&D first edition, but actually were totally fine with me. Actually, there were a lot of things that people would think, if you, although if you've seen me play video games, you might not think this, but you know I'm a big RPer, right? Like, I love good RP, I love deep RP, I love all those things very, very much. I'm super into it. Yay, love it. And you might think, oh, you probably wouldn't like the brutality of first edition or all this or all that, but actually those things were totally fine. I didn't mind that. I understand completely. Yeah. Okay, but do those people know that you like GURPS? They probably don't know I like GURPS, because if they knew I like GURPS, they would know I do like encumbrance. Because being super brutal is not gonna be a turn off. Oh yeah. So Axe, here's the thing I was gonna say. This is real. I think this is where I'm gonna defend D&D for a moment. People would say that D&D seemed adversarial between the GMs and players, and I would say that that is a misunderstanding of the genre. And I've really thought about this a lot, especially since and what I think is really interesting is that a lot of the Forge theory, which did not like gamist games or simulationist games, and like specifically talk smack about GURPS, helped me understand simulationist games and gamist games much better. And the more that I read Forge theory, the more I could appreciate Dungeons and Dragons in the end, and really, the more I could really understand what like good Dungeons and Dragons is about, that style, what that style is about at its best, which means I think I could actually run a pretty good D&D game now, because I really get it at this point in time. So about the adversarial, like Gary Gygax was adversarial, but Gary Gygax was a bunch of problems, generally speaking. That's not...
Some crew members are causing a disturbance on the ship.
But that's not like the best of D&D. I would love to see you run BX or BCMI. Like, I think that would be really interesting. Ever notice how the cockpit or space kind of looks like Transformers' face? Oh.
You're in control here, Parvati.
Oh.
Don't let a hunk of metal jerk you around.
Tell me if the volume's good.
All your life. You're always in control, right?
And so,
I guess that's kind of like when the fillers.
Sorry, they're talking. Gary Gygax was that guy. He was so much that guy that they pushed him out of the company. Do you know what I mean? Like, they pushed him out of the company because he was that guy.
Lean forward a little. It's just equipment. You're just an engineer using it.
Hmm?
Okay. We'll try
Okay.
again later. You'll get it.
Good training.
I promise.
More recent rule sets of D&D and their errata feel much more like they are written to foster a cooperative story between players and GMs. It was a very early editions that felt as though they were setting up a conflicted relationship. I think, again, that's about a misunderstanding of what the genre is about, and also what a story is. Like, there are different kinds of stories. Chromatic says, if you want to run BX or expert D&D with some new technology, run Forbidden Lands. Hi, Chromatic. But no, I would actually just want to run the actual old rules rather than like new interpretations of the old rules. Just like go straight on, full on old rules. Unstable Dios says, I thought I heard Gygax was reported to be adversarial, but I have also heard from secondhand sources that in game he wasn't adversarial as he's described as being. It depends. It depends, like, on what he was doing. Gygax was a wargamer who wanted to build a narrative form from the tales of heroism of his single wargaming characters. And then Arneson actually put a lot more. Also, I think it's important to just think about what story means, and to think about the ways in which there are different kinds of story. We have Arneson was a role player who wanted some assistance for conflict resolution. Yeah. And I just think it's really important to note that one of the things that I think is a problem with the narrative indie scene is that they only recognize one kind of story, right? So they're like, oh, D&D doesn't have stories, but I was like, oh, it does. It just has different kinds of stories. There's more than one way to build a story. It doesn't have to be like a 3-arc narrative, which is fine, but that's not the only way to build a story. That stories can be built in different modes, and old school D&D certainly has stories. It's just not the same kind of story. In short, I played with one with the son of one of Gary Gygax's players. Oh, that's very cool. I know that Gygax was super brutal with things like his tournament things, right? And it's also important to sort of think about Gygax was out to get his players. Gygax was out to get his players. Gygax out to challenge his players. And I think that this is one of the things that's important to think about the gamist model when you're doing it. So when you're talking about like adversarialness, right? Wasn't out to get. Thank you. Here's going to be my D&D doesn't have stories now. Be quiet. Episode. Right. But people would argue, oh, the new D&Ds get you like, oh no, there are stories in old D&D. There are lots of stories. It's just that the stories are structured differently, and I need to go to Emerald Vale. I'm on Monarch. Terra 2. Friendships due. Hold on. I want to go to Emerald Vale. Is that... Trask is hiding in Emerald Vale. Isn't Emerald Vale on one of these other planets we were at? Right? Wasn't it? But as his players got more experience, he had to get way more brutal and tricky to actually challenge them. Yes, definitely. And as I've heard, Gygax's players heavily challenge him in game. Oh, totally. Yeah. And I think most of his players were looking for that. Definitely. Hey, Prax, that is 100% true, which is why some of the supplements he produced are so brutal. Right. And I think that, and I think this is one of the spaces where I will 100% defend Dungeons and Dragons, because I think that people are critiquing it unfairly. I think that there are certain critiques of D&D which I think are unfair, that I will say, hey, that's not right. By the way, hold on. I just need to check. Isn't Emerald Vale one of these planets? We're supposed to confront Trask on Emerald Vale for our last... but wasn't that... No? Am I wrong? Is it on Terra 2? Well, it says it is. Well, okay then. It's there. We're going there. Boom. So, okay, this is what it's like. Barantar will understand this. And I'm going to say this, and this is going to be like the best... Yeah, it's where you started in, right? Yeah. So this is going to be an analogy which some people will get and some people won't. There are a lot of people who have never been in the military, and those people will often look at something like footage of drill sergeants, films with drill sergeants in it, and will say, oh my gosh, those drill sergeants are sadists who are out to get you. They're like mean, and they hate you, and they're out to get you, and this is so abusive and terrible, and it's the worst. And they don't understand that and they're power tripping, and they're this and they're that and all that stuff. A drill sergeant who is power tripping, who's a sadist, who's out to get you, is a bad drill sergeant and will not be effective at their job, which is not being out to get you. Their job is to challenge you and to teach you and to sort of set up a certain kind of environment, which may not be the environment that you're used to, but they're like, a really good drill sergeant is actually quite empathetic and thoughtful, because they have a specific job to do, and they have to know how to do that job well. And the job is not to just be mean to you. Their job is to actually, there's a specific pedagogy. It may not be the pedagogy that you're used to, but there is a pedagogy. And sadists are bad GMs. And people will often critique old school D&D thinking that it's sadism, but it's not. It's a drill sergeant instead. And if you don't like drill sergeants, that's cool. But, it isn't actually because I played with a lot of different DMs back in first edition. I played with a couple that were very, very good and some that were not good. And the difference between the good GMs and the bad GMs is that bad GMs were power tripping. but those were bad GMs, and we all thought so. You know what I mean? Like, good GMs in that style are not doing that. What they're doing is they're challenging you as a player, because that's what you're going for, right? A sadist drill instructor will be reprimanded and will probably be removed from duty, right? Because they're not doing their job right. They're forging you to be someone that is cool under fire, because that is literally what a soldier has to be, right? And gamist games, which don't have to be about murder, by the way, are about challenging the player. And there's a sense of fair play. There are people who will critique old school D&D by saying, you know, this adversarial style is just so stupid because GMs can just say rocks fall, everybody dies. There's no challenge. And I was like, yeah, but that's not what the GM is doing. Yeah, a GM could say rocks fall, everybody dies, but that's actually not what that would be bad GMing. There is a sense of fairness, because I mean, that's what gamism is about. It's about giving you a fair challenge. Rocks fall, everybody dies is not a fair challenge. And I think people really misunderstand that style. And that's a shame, because there's value in that style if people enjoy it. And if you put yourself in the right mindset, you can enjoy it. I just tend to want that style with RP, which I was not getting in the 80s, right? I mean, I wasn't bothered by the fact that your character could die so easily. That was fine. I wasn't bothered by the fact that it had all this sort of detail. That was also fine. There were things I was bothered by, and that was that I was bothered by other things, right? I was bothered by other things. But I wasn't bothered by the challenge. I actually thought the challenge was really interesting. And I loved encumbrance. Like, I loved being stressed out by encumbrance and trying to figure out how I was going to, because here's the thing about encumbrance rules. People are like, oh, encumbrance. Here's the thing about encumbrance. This is the thing that I think, again, people may miss about the encumbrance rules and some of the things that were happening in D&D. Wiki says it's the first area in the game. Yeah, it was, right? Yes. I aim to be the Dark Souls GM, challenging but rewarding. Hey, Grinning Moon, and when you have players who want that, then you want that. Falcon says, one of my deceased Marine buddies talked about the DI who were angry because they were stuck there during the training period. Oh, yeah. And I think that, so there are people who say, like, why do you need, I mean, I've heard people say it, like, who are sort of from a more sort of rules light indie space, like, why do you need an encumbrance? Like, it just bogs down the game. It takes away from the story. It's not interesting, right? Like, we don't need that. Really, what we need to do is, like, slim down and make it sleek. And, like, we don't need to track arrows. We don't need those things. Those things make the game worse. And I was like, well, it depends on the game you're playing. As Barontor says, encumbrance can create story. Seems like it can't. It seems like it wouldn't, but it can. And that's actually part of the kinds of stories you get from that style of game. Wizard Style says, I've started to explain the appeal of RPGs demanding player skill and system mastery using Dark Souls as a reference, which is interesting because there's like that cyclicism, right? Will being the Dark Souls of GMing also mean that it's super easy for players to break you as well, though? Maybe. Yep. Yes. It can be interesting, and it can be part of the story, right? If people, right, if you understand what its function is, right? Chromatic says, as a person who was harassed a lot in D&D 80s games, you wouldn't have stuck it out if you didn't get something from the table. Yeah, that's true. That's true, actually. I wouldn't have been there if I wasn't getting something out of it. And PH notes the thing, making choice about what to leave behind can be important. And that becomes, I think, where people misunderstand story. And actually I think about this a lot, which is again why I think that Morrowind worked better than, say, Oblivion when it came to sort of generating story. Krellin says, we don't need to track arrows. How does that build story? Well, part of the story in the battle at the end of the Avengers is Hawkeye tracking his arrow use and what happens when he runs out of arrows. Right. Does Geordie LaForge, who is encumbered, carry his crewmate? Make it under the door in time? Exactly. Artie says, if you're playing something based around survival, then encumbrance can be very important. Exactly. And fundamentally, old school D&D was about survival and making certain choices. And encumbrance and a bunch of things that seem like they're adversarial or not good for story were actually part of what generated the stories in that particular style. And they generated stories that you cannot make in a narrativist game, because narrativist games are not structured to tell those stories. They're structured to tell other kinds of stories, and vice versa. And that doesn't mean that narrative games are bad. They're not bad. They're created to tell certain kinds of stories, in the same way that Dungeons and Dragons is crafted to tell other kinds of stories. They're both stories, and they're also collaborative in a different way. Right? I mean, we've started thinking about collaborative storytelling in a kind of a narrow way, right? It's collaborative if the players invent world details, but also I'll note that players also created world details in Dungeons and Dragons every time they made a character. But again, it's just a different way of collaborating. It's a different way of sort of crafting that story. It just works differently. It's not worse. It's just different. And I find value in seeing kinds of stories that emerge from different paradigms, because I will tell you what I cannot find in a film. I can find in a film the stories that I create in a narrativist game. Not completely, because even the most narrative games are not actually scripted shows like film or television. So even the most narrativist game is going to give you something a little bit different than you'd get in a film or a book. And I believe that strongly. I actually think that even with some exceptions, I feel like Cthulhu Confidential gets the closest to matching what you'd get in a book or a film, because it's really, really scripted. Maybe Robin Law's Hill Folk, maybe. But generally speaking, even the most narrativist games are going to give you a story that's different than what you'd get in a book or a film, because they're not books or films, but they're closer. But I could never find a kind of a story that I would create in a gamist game, in a book or a film, because they just are made completely differently. And I value very much seeing stories that are crafted differently than what I'm used to seeing. I think that's super cool. And I love being challenged in my idea of what a story can be. And like, I think it's really good. Also, I wonder how I know if I'm, I know why. Sorry, I know why I went in there. I went in there because I wanted to see if this quest is related to anybody specific. Felix. This is related to Felix. So I need to take Felix with me. That's what I was here for. That was important. Let's see. Wizard Style says, yeah, there is definitely cyclicism, but there are people I know that are super into narrative rules RPGs, hate D&D, but have played through Dark Souls multiple times. Sometimes people put different standards on video games and RPGs. It's interesting. I choose to leave the extra food rations behind. We don't need that much food. Encounter starving over PH, exactly, right? And that I feel like is part of the like when a D&D is at its greatest is when all of a sudden you have to think about things like that. Ice Bunny says, I've posted the traditional clothes I can claim in Discord. I like, and one I like better. Oh, good. Anyone relating TTRPGs to Dark Souls will have completely turned me off of it, personally. Do you think D&D as broader versus the stories made in narrative games? No, just different. I just think of them as different. I agree, but I also know we need to update our relations as the generation turns. But I also want to note that the people who were playing in the 70s aren't dead, right? Like, I think this is the one thing that we talk about generational turns, but one, D&D is still the number one game by far, by an order of magnitude. The idea that nobody wants that old school experience is just not true. Because not only are the people who were in the old school still there, some of whom didn't want that experience, side note, but also people still want that experience. They're still like the idea that everybody wants this other experience is just not factually true looking at sales. People still want, like Critical Role is pretty crunchy, and there's a lot of old school mess in it, and that's like one of the most popular ones. Like, so I think that to sort of assume that the younger generation doesn't want that thing, I just don't think is true. And I think and also to assume that there weren't sort of like narrative story heavy games in the 80s is also not true. So like I think we have to recognize that the sort of like narrative gamist simulationist styles have always been there, and are also still here now. And I just think it's important to recognize that these styles have persisted from the beginning. It's not like, oh, in the old school they didn't have RP. They did. In the old school they didn't have narrativist indie games like we do now. Like now we've gotten so much better because we have better games because we have the new stuff. No, we had that stuff then. I mean, it wasn't as popular as D&D, as it's still not as popular as in D&D now, right? I mean, and people now are still playing. I mean, if you look at the top sales, which by the way I've done, because I have to write an article about it, the top selling games are still these really crunchy games. Shadowrun was number 5 in sales like just a couple quarters ago. Like people are still buying super crunchy kind of old school games and playing them. The old school renaissance was a thing. So I just think to sort of frame it as the new generation wants story, but the old generation was outdated because they just wanted, I have to switch screens by the way, because they just wanted like this thing that's out of date is not fair to anyone, right? It really misrepresents the past as well as the present, and that's not fair. I just think it's more important to recognize that there is a variety of stuff that people want and sort of have always wanted. I agree, but also narrative games often make combat. Let's see, I just got lost. Narrative games may come into a very short abstracted thing, but there is an appeal to the kind of Willis Diesel Statham action movies that you can get out of mechanics. Oh yeah, totally. Wizard styles. Even in Cthulhu Confidential, Jackie's Viv is so different from my Viv. Totally. And the story, and that makes it different, right? That makes it, oh, thank you, by the way, Jared. That makes it different from a book. I'm still alive. My body may disagree. Yeah. Yeah, it's obviously fine to not want Dark Souls as a TTRPG, so to say, but making that connection can help people see D&D and similar games in another light. Unstable Dio says narrative games work better for heavily social games like political dramas, but as someone who likes games that I can say they can drag out just as slowly as the super heavily style. That's true. Unstable Deus, that's true. Also, just to add, young people, am I right? Amber Dices is nearly 30 years old. Yes. So the game certainly exists. Yes. Unstable Deus. Yes. 100%. Amber Dices is nearly 30 years old. But also, did I bring it with me? NRT. I did not bring it with me. But in 1984, which is what? 94, 04, it's like 35, over 30 years old. There was a game called Sandman, which if you look at it now, is such, like it's like many of the kind of indie narrativist games that we have now. And that was like from 1984, right? Like I'm just saying that many of these things are not as new as people think they are. So it's unfair to erase people from the past that were doing different things, as well as erasing people from the present who are doing different things, right? Like I think we have to recognize diversity in the past as well as the present, right? I think that's just really important. Trooper and I, says Rissa, both played with a GM who would choose the system for the game based on the story idea he wanted to explore. Yeah. It's amazing today started with talking about how bad gatekeeping in music was, and now we're back to the evils of gatekeeping in games. Yeah, 36 years old, right? And that's only 10 years after the introduction of D&D. Yeah, and even, yes, right? I mean, there was so much there, right? We really need a TTRP archivist to remind us how the world was before we were involved in the hobby. Unstable Deus, I really think that's important. I do have, you can see them right there. Maybe point, right there. Those books right there are the Dungeons and Designers books, and each one of them is a different decade. It's, I think they do 70s, 80s, or maybe 70s and 80s, 90s, aughts, teens. Anyway, it's about the history of the hobby broadly. And there's a couple of people that are doing this archival work, and I just think it's really important. And not only, and honestly, I think it's important to this archival work, not just for the 70s, but also apparently for the 90s, because people seem to have forgotten a whole bunch of stuff that has happened. And I think it's important. I just think it's important. I think history is important, and remembering people is important. Yeah. So I need to take Felix with me, whom I have, and there's Nyoka. So, but we'll take Parvati since she's also from Emerald Vale. So we're going to take them both. That's what we're going to do. Yeah, VTM was 1991, 30 years ago, right? So, and I thought about this actually quite a lot, because somebody was talking smack about VTM and blah, 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 blah. And I was like, I don't think you understand how important VTM was as a game, because it was one of the first games that used female pronouns in the core book, right? They did that. They were one of the first ones that did the split where like the GM had female pronouns and the players had male pronouns. And having female pronouns in a gaming book when what you were used to is like only male pronouns and also chainmail bikinis was super significant. And a lot of women played VTM. Like a lot of women played VTM, and it was not coincidental that they had a lot more women in their artwork. They used female pronouns. VTM did a lot of stuff, and it makes me sad that people sometimes didn't get it. Also, I think I just bought something I didn't need, which is unfortunate because I just bought stuff that was not useful. But I'm selling things right now, and I want you to know I'm selling things because I care about you all. I'm selling all this stuff. Although I'm not going to sell that because it's a level 20 pistol, and maybe I can up, well, both of these. Oh, I'll sell one of them. Yeah. Erasure of Gen X. Yep. Erasure of Gen X. Yep. The 90s don't seem to exist anymore. We only seem to be listed in things from yeah. And it's actually, there is a real erasure of Gen X in ways that I think is just so Gen X, but also surprising to me. Like, I don't know, there was like 2 or 3 different infographics on TV where they were talking about generational attitudes, and Gen X was just removed. It was like Gen Z, millennials, boomers, the greatest, like on news shows, they just wrote Gen X out of their infographic, and I was like, really? Come on. Oh, the game's on screen. I'm just selling stuff. Thank you, though. Here we go. As long as you're buying armor, only sells things we can swear. We can't, no, I got it. But we have no proof. No, I totally sold stuff. I swear. Trooper's just playing the soundbite of selling things, not really selling, maybe. Trooper, you know that we're not real. It's fair. There was no generation between boomers and millennials. No, they're the silent generation. We're the silenced generation. So, sell. Okay, I'm gonna sell these things. Yeah, so I just think it's, I think it is important to not forget. Let's sell the junk to sort of keep the history alive. We're not going to 4 because I have to go to the pharmacy and get back before 5. So we'll probably play at about 3:30 is what I'm thinking. We got a lot of game in though, theoretically. I mean, we got through a whole mission. Oh yeah, so with D&D, as people were noting, the encumbrance is actually part of the story. What you choose, especially because a lot of times in D&D, what happens is you go to remote places where you don't have access to getting new stuff, right? So you go into this dungeon that's quite far away. What do you bring a cart? What do you do with that cart? Do you leave the cart outside? You know there might be bandits. And when you get this stuff, how much food do you bring? There's penalties for being encumbered, but you might need food and water. Do you have hirelings? But if you have hirelings, you have to pay them. Do you have the money for that? Do you get, it reminds me actually of, Roanoke, where the colonists came to Roanoke and they were so greedy that they planted tobacco and not food, and then they all died, right? So there's a way in which there are these sort of interesting choices you're being asked to make. Okay, well, that didn't work. Okay, well, all right. Maybe I have to go around a different way. Pay the hirelings and exposure. Do you use that potion now or later? Do you, like, there's a lot of, you have to make, and I don't know, and nobody wants to see Hireling's Moon, and yes, that's true. There's a lot of mystery with Roanoke too. And also, I think apparently they just went native, right? Or rather, hirelings don't want to see it. Yeah, and then like you have to sort of wonder, like, oh, you know what I think? I think I need to go to my map. I do have to go to my map. We're gonna go to my map, and we're gonna fast travel. That's it. Which is a very different concept from Amber, where you can normally literally summon anything standard that you would need or want for a given situation. Also, you're playing godlike characters who can literally pick up vehicles when they get stuck in the ditch. Also, I think Amber is a really important game as well. When you think about the history of the hobby, I think Amber is so important, right, historically, and I think that we cannot forget. I feel like I'm off center. There. We cannot forget the significance of Amber as well, and I think that's important. Do you sacrifice your party members now or wait till later? I have a lot of friends who need mountains of copper coins moved, yes, from the underground back to town. It'll be the best career move you've ever made. And actually, that has always been one of the really interesting parts of... So if you want to go old school dungeon, and by old school dungeon, I mean like a multi-level dungeon where you have a lot of... Let's see, I need to head north and east. North and east, where you have like a lot of multiple levels, right? Level 1 of the dungeon often has a lot of level 1 monsters. Level 2 of a dungeon often have a lot of level 2 monsters, etc., etc. And maybe there's like 9 levels. So, right, old school coin for XP, but it doesn't count if you don't bring it home, right? That's the thing about your old school 1 gold piece for 1 XP per gold piece is if you don't bring it home, it doesn't count. So, right? So there's this dungeon, and remember, also in the old school, you do not level up until you go back to town. So if you are in the dungeon and you level up to level 3, you have enough XP to level up to level 3, that's nice for you, but it's not going to count until you go back home, and neither will, you know... And neither will... Oh, I should have... Yeah, that was fine. Right, yeah, right. So there's a lot of, and I remember, and I will tell you, like, this is such a weird thing to remember, but
game.
Oh, when I think about some of the good moments, the name. Wait, my throat's dry. The name game. Come on, everybody. I said, now let's play a game. I bet you I can make a rhyme out of anybody's name. The first letter of the name. I treat it like it wasn't there. And then a B or an F. Or an M will appear. And then I say bo at a B. Then I say the name. Then banana, fan, and foe. Then I say the name again with an F, very plain. Then a fee, fi, and a mo. And then I say the name again with an M this time. And there isn't any name that I can't rhyme. Arty snack, but party snack, banana, fana, for 40 snack, fee, fi, mo, marty snack. Arty snack. Thank you for that resub, Arty snack. I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much. Thank you. Oh, and that was a gift sub. Thank you, Time of Gifts, for that gift sub. Yay. Floating discs and bag and sacks of holding. Yes. But you might not have them in the first level, right? And don't forget respawns. There should be a merchant who sells your experience for gold pieces. Your experience teaches you not to trust shady merchants. I love it. basically trainers were kind of like that. You sold them, yeah. One of the things, and I'll tell you, one of the things so again, at my core, I'm a method actor player, which means I really like things to be rooted in character decisions. And people would say that gameism and method acting is antithetical, but I don't think that's true. I think that you could have a gamist game that is pitched, that has things for method actors, or a simulationist game or a narrativist game. Like, I think that you can do those things. You just have to do them. Also, how am I going to get where I need to go? I think I've got to climb up mountains. Yeah, okay. Climbing up mountains. So one of the reasons why I always liked encumbrance, if you want to know, is because encumbrance is actually an in-character decision as well. I would say that Witcher is gamist and definitely has a lot for method actors. So that's interesting that you say that, and I need to think about this because I have some thoughts, right? So I think that one of the things is that Ron Edwards, who, by the way, invented lines and veils, by the way, Ron Edwards says that games are not great if they try to do all things to all people, and that really, that's not a thing you should be trying to do. But I think maybe, sure, okay, sure, you probably cannot be effectively all things to all people. But I actually do think that games can do more than one thing. And maybe he would argue that a game is better if it focuses on one thing specifically. But I actually do think that games can do more than one thing. Right? Like, I think that there's space. And I think it depends on, I think that there's like wiggle room. Here's a PH says, here's a campaign I think about running sometimes. The party are NPCs in a CRPG. The protagonist of the game is something of a murder hobo whose saves comes a lot. You remember the reset timelines. Oh, that's interesting. Ooh. Oh, that's interesting. And so for me, for example, Fate is received as a very narrativist game. And there are a lot of things that you look at it and you say, oh, yeah, that's totally narrativist. But I actually run it simulationist, and I had to make a couple of tweaks, but some of the things that I've done are just about grounding things in the game itself. So that, because I want my method actor players to be able to stay in character decision space as much as possible. And I have done things to make that possible. And Ryan Macklin, one of the designers of Fate, was like, oh yeah, you can run the simulationist. Fans don't think you can, but you can. Some of it is just about reconceptualizing things, right? Some is about conceptualizing and framing things in certain ways. Also, the name game. Come on, everybody. I said, now let's play a game. I bet you I can make a rhyme out of anybody's name. The first letter of the name, I treat it like it wasn't there. And then a B or an F, or an M will appear. And then I say bo at a B, then I say the name, then banana, fanner, and foe. And then I say the name again with an F, very plain. Then a fee, fi, and a mo. And then I say the name again with an M this time, and there isn't any name that I can rhyme. A frithial, befrithial, banana, fana, fo, frithial, fee, fi, mo, mefrithial. A frithial, Thank you for that resub of frithial. It is much appreciated. Thank you. Let's see. Where were we? I think some games are adaptable enough that they can be used for multiple styles without losing much. Yeah, I think that's fair. If you're concentrating on just one thing, like that would be fine for one-shot, short-length games. For longer game, I want something more changeable. I think Volpus, a lot of people wouldn't, right? And I have been in games where people really don't want other things because and I personally very often don't want narrativist stuff because it pulls me out of it. A lot of narrativist games force you out of the method player style, and I often don't like that. Right? But there are people who really love that, right? You get games with fate points sometimes, particularly when you stare at a player with no face and say, "Would you like a fate point?" But the thing is, I always ground it in their character, right? So like when I do that, I always try to make sure that it's grounded in their character space so that it amplifies their method acting. And I will note there's a thing that I don't do, and this is the thing that I would say. And again, remember, when I say would you like a fate point, they can always just say no, and they often will. I give them the opportunity to. I'm giving them an opportunity to do more in character work. Is generally what I'm doing when I do that. But there's a thing that I don't do. And what I don't do, and it's a thing that I could do, but I don't tend to offer them compels. I do not tend to give them compels when they don't have fate points. I could, like if I could say, here's a compel, I think this thing is going to happen. If you don't want it to happen, give me a fate point if they have no fate points, therefore forcing the thing to happen. So I don't tend to do that. I tend to make sure that there actually is a choice for them, and that choice then being sort of rooted in character development, right? So I'm using that as a space to enable the method actor player
Where are we headed?
to do more character work. Like that is almost always what I'm doing there is sort of giving a space for them to do method actor work, right? So I end up sort of framing, and this is really interesting because of the ways in which narrativism is often sort of antithetical to method actor playing sort of like full time. So a lot of the changes that I made, which are simulationist, are really because I'm mostly interested in like supporting method actor players. So I moved things out of narrativism to sort of in a more simulationist space so that those method actors can have their stuff. Wizard styles. I've always thought of the genus theory in terms of ideal types as designed by Max Weber, one of the early social scientists. Yeah, a hypothetical extreme that helps understand reality, although real things aren't actually close to those extremes. Wizard styles, I totally get what you're saying, and I would agree with you like 80% of the time or 90% of the time. I will give you the exception, though. Here's the exception. By method, you mean the not never leaving character, but yeah, I will totally define both of those things. So when I say method, what I mean is that your decisions are made based on in-character concerns, right? So a method actor player may not speak in voices. They might not. They might or might not use, like, I think when people think of the method actor stereotype, they think of a person who's only speaking like from I, like first person, like I do this, I do that, that they are only, they're only sort of like, they are their character, they embody their character, and they're only thinking in character. But you can be third person, and you can also be in a meta space, right? There's a way to do method acting from a meta space, and that is about when you're making your characters, when you're making your decisions from an in-character standpoint, right? So my character would do this, right? So, or my character would do a number of, there's a range of things my characters would do, but I'm gonna make these decisions based on what my character knows and my character knowledge, and sort of a character-centric space, which many narrative games actively discourage you from doing, or sometimes force you otherwise. So I think, for example, you could play Fate in a way where you're popped out of character and made sort of extra character decisions. You can do that with but I try to make it so that you don't have to, so that when you make these decisions, it all sort of is you can do it from an in-character point of view. But for example, you cannot do that in a good society. A good society forces you to make choices and decisions outside of a character point of view. the rumors and scandals phase is explicitly not being done from the point of view of your character. In that phase, very specifically, you're pulled into a meta narrativist viewpoint, like what we call storyteller viewpoint. You're pulled into a storyteller viewpoint rather than a method actor viewpoint. Good Society does it, and I enjoy Good Society because I just know going in that is what that game is about, and that like I'll just be in character. But actually, even then, I do a lot of things when I'm playing Good Society that are, Good Society wants you to be in storyteller mode, and so that's just what I do when I play that game, and I enjoy Good Society, so it's good. But I cannot get my method actor on in Good Society because the game requires you to sort of operate from the storyteller mode. That's why I play my characters the way I play my characters, which is why I can play in a plot point game I've already run and personally know the upcoming. Yeah, right. That's exactly right, Unstable. But some people. Wait. I forgot about the Max Weber Wizard Styles. Wizard Styles. Here's where I'm going to agree with you and then disagree slightly. And this is really interesting. I also operate from at least an additional character POV. Yeah, and right, so like, yeah, it's like some games don't want you to operate from a character POV because that's actually not a lot of narratives games don't want you to. That's not what they want. They want you to be a writer of the story, not an actor in the game, right? And so there are games that just don't let you be a method actor, which is fine because that's what the game is about. Question: were you able to maintain method actor style during the regiment? Yes. Well, no, but I'm not going to just answer immediately. I have to think about it. I have to go through all the bits, right? No, because I just had more than one character. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just had more than one character, so I could be method with multiple characters. Now, what's interesting is that, like, I dealt with Priscilla from a method space as opposed to from a narrative space. Like, so I did not interact with Priscilla Quibble from the standpoint of storyteller space, wherein I just used her to do the things that would drive the story forward, but didn't necessarily think of her as a full person, which you do in Good Society. But Good Society is also structured in a larger way that is what happens with those side characters. Those side characters that's their function. That's what they do. But the rest of the mechanics that bring about that particular thing was not in the regiment, so I didn't. Now, I can usually do method actor in a gamist game, although it depends on who my fellow players are. There's quite a bit of there are quite a number of gamist games wherein if you just want to, you can just do method actor anyway. But the only problem is that a lot of players will be unhappy with you if you do, because, and I have experienced that, where they're like, but you're making suboptimal choices. And I was like, yes, but my character would make that choice. And they're like, yes, but this is not what the game is about. The game is about being the most efficient so we can get past the challenge. So you can, I find that in a D&D game you can go method actor, but only if you have players who are going to be okay with that, with suboptimalness. But if the players are super gamist and they will not be okay with suboptimalness, then you can't. There'll be tension. This is what makes us succeed at the game, right? Because success as a method actor, success for me is learning something about my character, exploring my character, finding out new things about them, getting adversity. Maybe they fail and that makes them become a different person. Like, for me, success is, as a method actor, success is about exploring my character. As a storyteller, so not right now, storyteller, method actor, I'm using that's Robin Law's player types. I'm going to make videos about this. Don't worry about it. And that's different from GNS because GNS is about game systems, whereas Robin Law's player types is about player preferences. Like, and a butt kicker gets success when they kick butt. A tactician gets success when they figure out puzzles, right? Like, so like there are different, the specialist has success when they get to play their specialized character very well. Right, so like there are different things that is success, different things count as success for different player types. And it sort of depends on what that game is. Yes. So
I don't know who you are or why you're prowling around here, but I'm willing to make a guess. You're one of Harlow's gun hands, ain't you? He sent you after me.
I just had a question. So what was the thought? Oh no, oh yeah, Max Weber, Ideal Styles. Right, Wizard Styles. This is where I want to agree with you in general, but my one like 10% pushback would be this. It's like music theory. We have all these music theorists that create music theory, like they come like this is how music works. The big one would be Schenker, who sort of like analyzed all this music. It was like, this is how music works. This is what music theory is. If you have a chord, it's supposed to do this. If you have a chord, it's supposed to do that, right? And they'll give you the ideal, like the Max Weber ideal type. And it is an ideal type. And very often, that's not what music actually does, right? Music doesn't actually do that. Just what you were saying, Wizard Styles, 100% agreement. Actual music on the ground often doesn't do that, except, and here's the exception, Schenker wrote all this music theory, and then composers read that music theory, and then they wrote conforming to the music theory, right? So that there are people who read Schoenberg's 12-tone theory and then composed exactly in that way. They conformed. So like oftentimes the theorists look at a diverse body of music and then come up with theory that sort of describes the music, generally speaking, although it never is perfect. But then once that theory becomes popular, people then write to the theory, and so then they write things that conform perfectly to the theory. So there are things that fit that extreme, and I will say there were a bunch of people who were making all that theory, that forged theory, and then they wrote their games to conform to that theory perfectly. So there are specifically some story-heavy games that came out of the Forge that do exactly what Forge theory says it does, because they made the game Forge theory in mind. Many people don't, and then the games don't actually fit. You know what I mean? Like they don't necessarily fit the theory, just as you're saying. It's like they are, I think, in a more general space, more like the Max Weber ideal types. But there are scenes that
Former wife
are very...
If you so much as hurt a hair on Rosanna's head, I will put you in the ground.
Relax, she's fine.
Yeah, okay. I'm having a conversation with a hired killer, but I'm supposed to relax. Thing is, you and I are at an impasse. Harlow wants me dead, and I've got no intention of dying.
Yes, self-fulfilling theory, right? And I think that, so there's a way in which I agree with Wizard Styles that most games, especially, first off, especially games written before GNS theory existed, right, are not going to conform perfectly to GNS theory. 100%, because the theory didn't exist yet, right? People were not self-consciously writing to fulfill the idea. So it's always going to be a little bit complicated, right? I mean, yes, D&D is a gamist game, 100%. But, you know, there are elements of simulationism in it as well. And the different editions are actually quite different. And so they sort of skew slightly differently. And a lot more things are hybrid and complicated than the theory itself would give. It's just that then there's a scene of people who then are very self-consciously writing to the theory. Yeah. Rules are there to be broken or minimum questioned, unless you made the rules yourself, right? And I think it's also important to remember that these rules were made by people themselves in order to do something. They were not imposed from without. They were self-generated from this particular community. So it wasn't like, oh no, you're putting rules on me. They're like, we're making our own rules. Like, so it's a different vibe. Wizard says, oh sure, that was also something Max Weber himself was dealing with. Totally. People were taking his theories about ethics and ideal types corresponding to that and modeled ethical guidelines after that. Yes. Too complex to type out in Twitch chat, but theories shape reality through crosstalk and then yes. And I find that really interesting, right? Like, and that's one of the reasons why I think theory is fascinating. I mean, I like theory in that sort of Max Weber type where I'm like, oh, that's an ideal theory that makes me think. And maybe I don't even agree with the theory, but Why did you betray Harlow?
How do I know that I can trust you?
I'm just interested. What's the worst that could happen? Harlow sends a stranger with a gun after you? Yeah.
Yeah, guess that's the point. Listen, I don't know what lies Harlow's dripped down your ear, but you'd be a fool to trust him.
I don't trust either of you.
I never betrayed Harlow. Harlow betrayed all of us. The board's got him in their pocket, been paying him off for years. All that palaver about revolutions, it's a lie.
You're a real piece of work, Trask. Not just a turncoat, but a liar too.
Ooh.
Go piss up a rope, kid. I've got nothing to prove to you.
Interesting.
That's the whole truth.
Interesting.
Harlow's just another board asset. A two-bit mercenary wearing a dissident's clothes.
Ooh. Ooh. Tricky. Tricky. Thanks for asking, but I'm in the Discord. Yeah. I love my Discord is a place for big walls of text. I love it. Yeah, so I personally, I think I really like taking different theories and putting them in conversation with each other. Like, I like thinking about player styles from Robin Laws and also GNS theory together, even though they're not supposed to go together, to see what you can do. Because here's the thing I think is really fascinating, personally. Sorry, I didn't say it yet. I will tell you, Unstable Dios. So simulationism is, so under the theory, under the GNS theory, which actually comes from, which was actually based on an earlier theory. Well, if you want to go back, before any of these theories happened in the 90s, you asked me to take your word, show me some evidence. Hold on, you've got some explaining to do. That one, so we'll do that.
Yeah, I've got proof. There's always a paper trail when the board's involved. I chanced upon some correspondence between Harlow and his employer. I don't know that it makes a difference. What was I to do with that evidence? Bring it in front of the board? There's no authority in Halcyon willing to take Harlow to task.
I'm gonna think about that. So before the whole, so the first one was like the threefold theory was the first one, and that was called drama. Wait, I think it was called story game simulation. I think were the three original terms made up by this woman in the 90s. And the whole reason why she came up with this theory was because, is because the gaming world before then was, remember this is the late 90s where this is happening, was basically being torn between a binary of role players, ROLL, versus role players, ROLE. And there was a lot of basically, let's just say, Vampire versus D&D, where like Gary Gygax was saying those vampire players aren't even real gamers. That's not, LARPing isn't real gaming. It's not real RPG. Those people are just amateur theatrics. They're just role ROLE players. They're not really doing it. And then the VTM is like, you're not real players. You're just role players, ROLL. It was this big binary between there's like only two types. Either you just care about the mechanics or you care about story. Like that was like the discourse, and it was ridiculous. And this woman on Usenet was like, wait, let's not have this binary at all. Let's make a triangle, right? And like think about it in this way. And she was like, okay, story, and this is about priority, like story, simulation, game, right? And this becomes GNS theory. And you can think about it in, it's funny because in early college 2000s, of course people played both. You know what I mean? Of course I played both, for heaven's sakes. But it's an idea of like, what is the emphasis of the game? And the emphasis in a gamist game is that a gamist game, and I'm reading this theory kindly and sort of a bit more clearly because it evolved. A gamist game is about challenging the players, and it is about having a fair challenge, right? So there are a lot of things that could be gamist. Needing to have player skill to figure out how to make a really good character or optimize it, or using player skill to figure puzzles. Like a gamist game, if there's a puzzle in a game, you would not roll to solve the puzzle, right? You would actually have to solve the puzzle yourself as a player because that's part of the thing. Making rolls to get around some of those challenges is not particularly gamist. Be like, oh, there's a big door puzzle. Hey GM, can I just roll door puzzle, the skill, because my character has it, and then I'll know it? That's not particularly gamist, right? So gamist is going to be like, it's about challenging the players, just like a murder mystery, right? A murder mystery, like a good Agatha Christie murder mystery is a gamist novel, right? Because the point is that you as a reader are trying to figure out the puzzle, right? And then a simulationist game is about exploring something and finding out what happens with it. Many people think that simulationism is just about trying to model the real world, but that's actually not true. Some people do that, but it's about trying to explore something, right? So, and you don't know the end, right? You're like, okay, so I'm interested in finding out. I like character simulation, so I like having characters, not knowing what the end of them will be, and then just playing to find out where they develop. Or maybe you want to simulate a world, so you set up a world and then you see what happens in the world. Or maybe you're interested in simulating. Anyway, it's about exploring. And then narrativism is about telling, is about the story, right? The emphasis on is on a narrative, like having a narrative and working through themes. 5-act structure, 3-act structure. And like each one of these, there are moments in each one of these styles where you're going to have to give up something of the other style to get what you want. So for example, and there are things that people don't like about each style, which is why they like another style better. So for example, narrativists sometimes don't like simulationist games because simulationist games might not go anywhere, right? Like, if you want, if you're a narrativist and you want your story you want a particular story, right? Sometimes that story is just not going to happen in a narrativist, in a simulationist or a gamist game. Like they're just not, those stories are not going to come out that way. But if that's what you want, then those things are not going to be satisfying. It's not going to be satisfying for you to sit around for 2 hours talking about going nowhere. You know what I mean? It's not how our stories are supposed to work, right? That's very unsatisfying if that's what you want. And so there are moments where the narrativist will break the simulation or will break the game so that it makes a more satisfying story. Like if you want to play the Princess Bride, there are a bunch of things you just don't want to happen. Like you don't want Wesley to do that whole big speech To the Pain at the very end and make that amazing bluff, and then the bluff roll fails and then the bad guy just stabs him. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to be a satisfying narrative, and then you're just like, oh well, that was anticlimactic, right? Those narrative ones, they want that climax. They want to build to it. They want a good satisfying climax and to come down off of it. And there are ways in which you are expected as a player and as a GM to help craft that. And narrativist games give you tools specifically in order to help craft that narrative. Simulationist games will be okay if the narrative doesn't do that, because that's not what the main function is. But also, there are gamist players that will not like the simulation, or actually there are gamist players who will not like either narrativist games or simulationist games, because both narrativist games and simulationist games can be unfair. They can be unfair in a way that gamism is actually quite often about being fair, a fair challenge. Whereas in a simulationist game, if you go up against a monster that's just way too strong, you'll die because I'm not going to change it for you. Do you know what I mean? Like I don't care. That's not how the simulation goes. Or there are a number of narrativist games which will change the difficulty of something based on where you are in the story. So for example, if it is more dramatically interesting for this door to be more difficult, then the door will be more difficult. As a matter of fact, if it's more dramatically interesting for you not to be able to get through the door, you just won't be able to get through the door. Or if it's dramatically interesting for you to be able to get through the door easily, then it will be. And that goes against the gamist idea of a fair challenge, right? So each one of these positions have moments where people from the other position might start feeling a little twingy. Like you might be fine with the gamist game for the most part, or the narrativist game, or the simulationist game, until one of those little moments that breaks it for you. So you know, it's just a different like there's just different emphases, and many things can coexist very well. But there are just certain little moments, like so for example, for me, I have to put myself in a very specific mindset to play Good Society, and I think Good Society is really well done, and I enjoy it. But it is a mindset that is very specific. I play completely differently in my mind when I'm playing Good Society than when I am playing as in other modes. I do things that my character would not do because it's better for the story, in ways that in some ways make my character less. Yeah, yeah. By the way, you should have shown those papers to his crew. Expose him for a fraud.
I squandered my chance. If I were a more patient man, I might have confronted Harlow, evidence in hand. But I got in his face, and we came to blows.
I just have to finish this.
I hid my papers before Harlow chased me out. Back in the middle of the base, there's an old vent in a utility corridor. I stashed my evidence in that vent.
Okay. What was Harlow doing for the board?
Board-sanctioned piracy.
Yeah, I know that though.
Harlow went after the
I know
ships
that.
The board wanted destroyed.
I've seen
Capturing
evidence.
anybody the board wanted captured.
Mm-hmm.
If he captured you, we'd ransom you. Harlow liked to do the job himself. Gather up the captives on his own ship, vanish for a couple of days. Only that's not what happened. Harlow's been selling his captives off to the board. I don't know where they ended up. Re-education, Tartarus, maybe worse.
Yeah, but why would the board buy up Harlow?
Because he's for sale.
By the way,
Anything
I'm
the board can buy,
ending soon.
The board will buy, and that includes loyalty. Harlow was a charismatic bastard, and he was ruthless. With Harlow in their pocket, the board had an informant, a pirate, a smuggler, and a gang leader all rolled up into one odious excuse for a human being. Sounds like a deal to me.
All right, I've heard enough.
Take it you've made up your mind.
I'm not going to kill you, Trask, but I am going to ask for your ring.
You gonna tell Harlow I'm dead?
Yeah.
May as well. I'm never going back to that life again. Here, take the ring. And for what it's worth, my gratitude.
And then I'm going to go see for this, and then I'm going to look for this evidence is what I'm going to do, right? That's my next goal. There was a thing that I need to tell you. It was really important. While I save? No? Save game. There was something that I needed to tell you. What was it? What was the thing that I needed to tell you? Well, I mean, I've got a bunch of things I need to tell you, just generally speaking, you know, because that's life. Yes. Oh, yes. I remember what I was going to tell you. Right. So I'm running City of Light and Shadows in a simulationist way, in that it's like right, like we're exploring to find out what happens. And I am, and I will say there are not a lot of simulationist games on stream. Like they're like most games, there are very few. Simulationism as a style is just not really talked about or seen very much anymore. It's just not particularly. It's kind of been forgotten, kind of like Gen Xers, and that is a particular style that is not. Ooh, wrong button. That's a particular style that's not particularly well represented in the streaming scene, which is one of the reasons why it's important for me to run a simulationist game. Although with the increased popularity of Vampire, I think we might get more of it. But I will say this, and this is something to note, that I'm running it as a simulationist game, focusing on character simulation, primarily, although the world's also secondary. And I have received multiple comments from people who have critiqued the game for not doing narrativism correctly. I've gotten some, yeah, it's mostly from narrativists who think I'm running a narrativist game and think I'm not doing a narrativist game well. And I'm like, I'm running a simulationist game. I'm not running a narrativist game. Because they think that, because, I mean, that's what they're used to seeing, especially if the game seems dramatic. So they think that it's a narrativist game. By the way, I've not seen anybody in chat, like in making chat comments, including people telling me to get off of chat, shut down the game. So I'm a little surprised. Maybe I've missed you. So yes, I'm gonna just reconnect to chat. I am live, so it's not like I'm not live, but so I assume that y'all are chatting with me and I don't see it. This is my assumption. We will see. I'm gonna just finish this up and then I gotta go. I just refreshed the screen. Oh yeah. Oh. You got disconnected. So everybody's disconnected from chat. So what I think is that chat is down. This was a problem like what, 2 days ago? There was a stream where Twitch chat went down. So I think it's Twitch chat that down. So I'm gonna just finish this thought and I'm gonna go, because then I gotta go, and I'll tell you where you can find me. So I have gotten critiques multiple times from people for not doing narrativism correctly because they think it's a narrativist game and it's not. And what I think is fascinating about the critiques is that when they make the critiques, it shows me where the differences are between simulationism and narrativism, right? Like, and I find that instructive. Like, I'm not mad because I was like, yeah, I just let them know that's not what I'm doing. But I see where the tensions between the styles emerge. And the most recent one that I got was somebody said, oh, you didn't need to make Oscar Gestapo, have a Gestapo background to make him an interesting character, right? So, and that was saying that the way you make characters is for like story interestness. So if it's not interesting to the story, you don't need it. But that's not how I run characters at all. I don't make characters so that they're interesting for the story. I make characters because that's what would happen in the world, right? Like my Oscar happens because of simulationism, not because of narrativism. But the person I was talking to was coming at it from a narrative space, wherein, if there's Chekhov's gun, if there's a gun in a first act, it has to go off in the third. You do things to characters. The characters you make because they will further the narrative of the story. And if they don't further the narrative of the story, you just remove elements that are not for the narrative. But that's not what I'm doing, right? That's not actually where I'm going with that. So, and I think it's fascinating to see where those tensions happen. And that's when you can kind of see like some of the differences between the approaches. Anyway, I should go because it's 3:40 and also Twitch chat is down and that makes me sad. So let me sign out. Let me tell you where you can find me and what I'm doing for the next week. I will put up the new calendar for the month, which is not January's calendar is not up yet, but for next week, but I'll put it up. So where can you find me? Let's see. I've got offline things to later today and tomorrow. Monday is no. Okay, so next week on, oh gosh, hold on. I actually think I've got things happening and wait, I'm not gonna sign off until I look this up, because what I'm trying to tell you is I know there's some stuff that is on my list, not in my mind, and I don't want to forget them, so I'm going to tell you where to find me. Origami Shuriken, that's a session 0, that's offline, so not Tuesday. What is it, the 5th? We've got on Thursday, my regular stream for my regular stream, which is we'll be doing The Long Dark. Friday, it's up in the air, uncertain about. Oh no, actually no. Friday is not uncertain. Friday is very clear. Friday. So Thursday is 6 p.m. Eastern time. Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern, I will be over on Colonomicon doing their GM postmortem, and I'll talk about GMing It's like their GM advice show. I'll be talking about GMing historical games. So you can catch me on Friday on a talk show talking about historical games. Saturday will be more The Outer Worlds. Maybe we'll finish it. Who knows? And then I think that's it. I think that's the week. So that's where you'll find me. Also, we have a I will. Well, the schedule for the week will be on the calendar, which is on the About page on the Twitch. So you can always find my schedule on the Twitch page, just on the About page. So that will always be there for you. And then I'll let you know. Also, we have chat is not working, so I cannot put the commands out. But I'll tell you, I have a Discord. You'll just have to. There might be. I don't know if there's a link on my page. If there's not, we'll have to fix that. But if you go to youtube.com/TrooperSJP, that is the archive of all of my shows. You can find my episodes there. If you go to Twitter @AcademicFoxhole, you can find me on Twitter, where I probably cause trouble. But I hopefully in a kind way. And also we have a Patreon, which is also at Academic Foxhole. And that is to support the RPGs on the channel, which we have for January coming up this month, Cthulhu Confidential. And that will be starting on the 16th, which is a Saturday. So we've got a lot of goodness coming up, but I have got to go to the pharmacy. So I want to thank you all for being here. You all are amazing. I appreciate all of you, even though you can't talk to me, which is my nightmare. I don't like streaming if you can't talk to me. That's not fun. I'm gonna go. But join us, we'll hang out, and I will catch you on the flip side. And the next time you see me, this microphone, is going to be in a slightly different position. I'm gonna mix it up. I have to figure out where I want to put the boom mic. It'll be fine. So anyway, take care of yourselves. Oh, yeah, I'm gonna I know I shouldn't, and I know that Carlin is going to yell at me if I do this. Oh, I can't raid anyway because everything is down. So that's it. I'm going. I'm leaving. I will catch you all later. I will catch you on the flip side. Take care of yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye.